Chapter 219. Plop. Gold Chin fell to the deck and was completely unconscious. His defeat brought the battle to an end. The morale of the pirates who were stubbornly resisting fell to the bottom. They threw away their weapons and surrendered, kneeling and begging for mercy. The young knight panted heavily. After capturing the sea snake woman, he defeated the sea snake magic beast that came back to rescue her. Then, he returned to the gray rat with the momentum of a great victory. After that, the young knight and Zhong-gu cooperated and used the dragon roar to stun Gold Chin temporarily. Zhong-gu seized the opportunity and knocked Gold Chin unconscious. What should we do with these people? Zhong-gu stabbed his two-handed greatsword into the deck. The fierce battle had left him exhausted, especially the injury of his broken arm, which had obviously worsened. Gray Rat jumped from the mast with a nervous expression. These people that Zhong-gu asked not only included the sea snake woman and Gold Chin, but also Gray Rat. The young knight thought for a moment and smiled at Gray Rat. Captain Gray Rat, I hope you can command your subordinates to control these 3 ships. This was a battle. You used your actions to win my trust. I am a knight of the Empire and I keep my promise. I hope you cherish this hard-won trust and don't let me down. I understand, sir. Gray Rat was very respectful. The young knight's strength greatly deterred him. At this moment, a shout came from the captives. You are a knight of the Empire? Did I hear wrongly? I am also a citizen of the Empire. Help, help! The young knight, Zhong-gu, and Gray Rat turned around and saw a fair-looking young man kneeling on the deck trying to stand up. Behave. The pirates of the Gray Rat immediately kicked him to the ground. Let me go, let me go. I am a citizen of the Empire, I am an ally. The young man shouted anxiously. He is not Gold Chin's captive. He is an enemy who killed many of our people. Gray Rat's eyes were cold. Don't kill me, I have important information. I need a secret talk, a secret talk. Sir Knight, aren't you curious? Why did Gold Chin and the sea snake woman work together to attack Gray Rat? The young man's eyes flashed. Listening to these words, there seemed to be more to it. Moments later, in the captain's room, Zhong-gu personally guarded the door of the captain's room. In order to save his life, the young man directly revealed the secret. I'm a spy for the Empire. I don't have a name, only the code 006. At present, it belongs directly to Admiral Yen Tan. This is not my original appearance. I used a high-grade transformation potion. My mission is to instigate a well-known pirate and interfere with the selection of the Pirate King. Actually, the Empire had already discovered the reappearance of the pirate throne a long time ago. Of course, the Empire wouldn't just sit by and watch. They've already started to deal with the pirates, and I'm one of the vanguards. The young knight couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. What can prove your identity? The young man smiled bitterly. This time, I'm acting in secret, so I won't have any proof on me. However, I've already successfully instigated Gold Chin and Sea Snake Lady. They can prove that I'm on your side. The young knight nodded slightly. The Golden Chin and the Sea Snake Woman were both unconscious. This young man only jumped out after they were unconscious and heard that he was a knight. If he wanted to prove his words, he only needed to wake Gold Chin and Sea Snake Lady up and beat around the bush. Tell me in detail. The young knight stretched out his hand and gestured for 006 to sit down. The young man's kindness made 006 slightly relieved. After he sat down, he said in a very sincere tone, Sir Knight, the Empire is currently on a punitive expedition against the orcs. Our Vanguard Legion has already gained a foothold in the wilderness continent and built many castles. Not long ago, many Temple Knights of the Temple Knights went to the castle to take up the position of City Lord. And the orcs are actively mobilizing various races, intending to form an alliance to destroy our Vanguard Legion and all the castles. The dark clouds of the war are gradually thickening. We must transport a large number of troops into the wilderness continent to have the strength to start a large-scale war with the orcs. And the transport will definitely take the sea route and use ship. The young knight nodded again. He knew that although there was teleportation technology, the act of teleportation was actually very limited. The higher the level of life or magic energy of the teleportation target, the greater the consumption of teleportation. The young man had been in the center of the alchemy factory and had fought desperately around the teleportation door. He was very familiar with the mysteries of it. 006 continued, if a new generation of Pirate King is born, the pirates will all submit to him. The pirates, who were originally fighting separately and were free and undisciplined, will unite as a whole. If the Pirate King wants to do something to our transport line, it will have a huge impact on the Empire's strategy of conquering the wilderness continent. There were many difficulties in conquering across the sea. The Empire had to ensure the safety of its own transport line. This sea transport line not only transported troops, but also materials. The transport line had to be maintained for as long as the war lasted. The transport line was a lifeline and one of the important pillars of the Empire's hegemony. 006 sighed, once the Pirate King is born, according to his divinity and clergy, it is very likely that he will plunder the Empire's transport line. And at present, we have to admit that the Empire does not have an orthodox sea god. This did not mean that there was no clergy, divinity, and divine domain related to the sea. In fact, the god of commerce had a divine domain related to navigation, and the god of wind of the Empire also mastered the divine power of the sea wind. The orthodox sea god, mentioned by 006, referred to the main clergy. The main clergy was the god of the sea, which could be regarded as the orthodox sea god. Although the Qingming Empire unified the human continent, it was a landlocked country a long time ago. In the aspect of the sea god, it had always been lacking. In fact, the roots of history could be traced back to a longer time. The throne of the sea god had always been held by an outsider. After all, the human race was a terrestrial race and had always been lacking in competitiveness in this regard. 006. The three legendary pirates are troublesome enough. Once the Pirate King is born, it will pose a huge threat to the Empire's strategy. The Empire will never let it go, so it sent spies, including me, to secretly sneak in and try to recruit pirates for our use. After that, we will try our best to destroy the birth of the Pirate King. Of course, if we can support one of our people to sit on the pirate god's throne, that would be perfect. The youth understood, so the Gold Chin and the Sea Snake Woman have such confidence to violate the rules of the brother pirates and start with Ash. 006 nodded. In fact, this attack was instigated by me. I just didn't expect you to appear. The Brother Pirates is the largest pirate group in the world and is the primary target of our secret mission. In fact, don't look at its large scale. According to the analysis of our scholars, they are actually the weakest side. Because there has always been no contractual restrictions between the main members of the Brother Pirates. The reason why they are united is entirely due to the charisma of the leader Firebeard. However, this kind of charisma is very weak under the military power of the Empire and enough temptation. The young knight nodded. The Gold Chin and the Sea Snake Woman were the best proof. In the end, pirates are just a group of evil villains who seek profit. The young knight sneered. 006 said, Sir, since you are a knight of the Empire, why take advantage of this rare opportunity to participate in the Empire's secret mission? Can I? The young knight showed a surprised look. Of course. 006 immediately replied, as long as we do something in line with the pirates, we can get the divine favor of the Pirate King, and even our names will be on the holy monument. His entire body is covered in dust. He must have snatched an extraordinary treasure, which is why his name suddenly rose to the first place on the Saint Monument. 006 was obviously an elite spy. He took the initiative to tell the young knight this secret. In addition to saving his life, he also wanted to draw the young knight to his side and make it his own merit. He seemed honest and sincere, but in fact, his words contained prying and provocation. But to his disappointment, the young knight was expressionless at the moment and did not reveal any clues. Chapter 220. 006 did not get anything out of the young knight, but the young knight had gained a lot. In the end, the young knight asked 006 what benefits he would get if he joined and carried out the Empire's secret mission. 006 immediately answered. There were benefits, and they were very generous. Moreover, the support they received was based on the cultivation, strength, and contributions of the person who submitted to them. There was a complete set of rules inside. It was not complicated, but it was very comprehensive. This made the young knight think of his experience on the island of bewilderment. During that period of time, he accepted Zhong-gu and the others, discovered the threat of the blue dog fox-wolf, and went on a punitive expedition against the surrounding herds of beasts in the camp. In order to keep Zhong-gu in check, ZD and Sang-su came up with a list of resources to exchange. The complete set of rules provided by 006 should have come from the scholars of the Empire. In comparison, ZD, Sang-su, and the others' exchange list was very crude. The young knight asked a few more questions, and when he found that 006 did not say anything new, he let Zhong-gu take 006 away. However, he was not imprisoned in the dungeon at the bottom of the ship, but under house arrest in an independent cabin. Sitting alone in the captain's room, the young knight fell into deep thought. To be honest, he was now a little lost. In the island of bewilderment, he had absorbed the second blood core. The absorption process was very smooth. After opening the third layer of protection, the young knight held the blood core in his hand. At that moment, the desire to devour the blood core was so strong that he did not need anyone to guide him. He naturally activated the blood core in his heart, and the red light of magic energy gushed out. After the red light covered the blood core in his hand, the blood core quickly dissolved and flowed back into the red light. The red light of magic energy absorbed by the blood core in his heart immediately swelled. The patterns on the surface became more solid and deep, and the red light it emitted also had a crystalline feel. The young knight realized at that time that the blood core of the warlord was clearly many times stronger than the blood core in his heart. His blood core could not do anything to the gold-level python vine, but after absorbing the blood core of the warlord, the blood core could already attack legendary-level creatures. The Flame Dragon King was proof of that. With the legendary bloodline of the Flame Dragon, the young knight could transform into a dragon man. Currently, he could mutate into a dragon head, dragon claws, dragon scales, and dragon flesh. The bloodlines of the demonic beasts that he had absorbed in the past were all modified, so there were major drawbacks to their bloodlines. Once it mutated in a normal environment, the young knight would suffer unbearable pain, and his magic power would be unbalanced, so he could only abandon it. After losing his monkey-tail brown bear form, acid-green lizard form, spear scorpion form, and other forms, the young knight's abilities immediately became barren. He was not as rich as before. However, the new draconian form, which came from the legendary bloodline, was really powerful. Coupled with the fact that the young knight was not suppressed and could sense and use the silver combat chi in his body, the young knight's combat power had increased by a large margin, far surpassing his peak state on the Lost Island. However, this bit of strength is still not enough. The young knight smiled bitterly to himself. He was under a lot of pressure as he was wanted by the Sacred Empire. The Qingming Empire was the #1 force in the world. It ruled over an entire continent and dominated the world. Now that it was invading the wilderness continent, the barbaric orcs were retreating in defeat. They could only watch as the Empire built castles on the wilderness continent. The young knight knew in his heart that using pearls to soak rice was just a struggle at death's door. This was like a bomb with a lit fuse. Once the fuse was burned out, it would explode sooner or later. Although I escaped from the Lost Island, in fact, isn't this world also a huge lost island? It's broader, more vast, more terrifying, more profound, more mysterious, and more complicated. Now, we are involved in the vortex of fighting for the pirate god throne. One wrong step and we will be smashed to pieces. The young knight was a leader. His vision was not shallow, and he could see the danger. Of course, he also saw the opportunity in it. Therefore, the essence of his confusion was actually hesitation. Where should we go from here? Fortunately, he was no longer alone. He had companions. This problem should be left to them to think about. Not long after, the young knight and Zhong-gu secretly returned to the strange fish together. This is the specific situation. The young knight told everyone the detailed information. The young knight trusted these people. Because these people had all escaped from death, they had experienced life and death, and their friendship was deep. At the same time, they were all burdened with serious crimes. They were all in the same boat, and they had to look out for and rely on each other. Hearing this information, everyone fell into deep thought. For a moment, the meeting room was silent. What should we do next? What do you think? Tell us, the young knight said after a moment. Baya answered without thinking, no matter what we want to do, whether we want to continue to the wilderness continent or return to the Qingming Empire, we should first be absolved of our crimes. We should contact the upper echelons of the empire as soon as possible. It's not good to hide in the strange fish all day. As a young man, Baya was already a little irritated by being cooped up in the strange fish all day. This was actually a very common emotion. The reason Baya went to the wilderness continent was because he wanted to become a knight. In the future, he would return home in glory and marry his beloved Miss Sybil. But fate made a fool of him. He had to kill Scab and bear the crime of murder. Of course, this was not what he wanted. Fat Tongue sighed. Alas, the situation here is very complicated, young man. We can't rashly contact the upper echelons of the empire. It's very, very stupid. We have 2 divine artifacts, the tower spirit, and most of the alchemy skills and techniques of the war traffickers. These things are too valuable, and we are too weak. If we are exposed, the upper echelons of the empire will easily rob us. They won't negotiate with us and absolve us of our crimes. Baya was dazed. Then why don't we just find a reputable upper echelon? Fat Tongue sneered. Reputable? What we have is enough to make the most reputable nobles of the empire give up their reputations. Because the value of the Wisteria Chamber of Commerce is too great, it has been divided by the upper echelons of the nobles who are usually full of credibility. I know the real faces of these people too well. These words resonated deeply with Sandow. Before he completely surrendered to Zhong-gu, he was a mercenary and suffered a lot in the process of dealing with the nobles. Sandow deeply agreed. Boy, think about it. If you are a big shot with power and influence, and you see a child holding gold in his arms, would you want to negotiate with him for the gold, or would it be easier to just rob him? Baya was speechless. Fat Tongue continued. That's why we have to save the president of the Purple Stem Society. Only by waking her up can we have a channel to contact the 100 Needles clan. Only President ZD has personally contacted the 100 Needles clan's leader. President ZD and Zhenjin are engaged. The 100 Needles clan is a great aristocratic clan in the south. Although they are in dire straits now, as the losers, they have already secured their new position in the empire. They have joined the great emperor's faction and gained a firm foothold. Zhenjin is the only heir of the 100 Needles clan, which is an extraordinary bargaining chip. The 100 Needles clan was defeated and surrendered, and they were purged and punished by the empire. The Emperor has clearly issued a decree that the Hundred Needles clan can only have one heir, and the heir cannot be changed or changed. This means that if Zhenjin dies, the Hundred Needles clan will not have a new heir. Once the Hundred Needles clan's leader also dies, the Hundred Needles clan will have no heir and will be replaced by other nobles. The Hundred Needles clan's leader will do everything he can to save Zhenjin. Only by relying on his channels can we possibly get away with it. Thus, I believe that the most important thing right now is to wake up our guild master. Fat Tongue's words were of course selfish. He was very afraid that everyone would give up on ZD's treatment, so he blindly emphasized the importance of ZD. But everyone had to admit that Fat Tongue's words made sense. It was more reliable to rely on the Hundred Needles clan. Zhenjin, the captive, could force the Hundred Needles clan's leader to submit. Song Su shook his head and sighed. I've done my best. In fact, we've all done our best. We've been searching the islands near Puzzle Island non-stop these days and finally found the sapphire gold coffin. We consumed most of the magic materials and built an alchemy array to completely heal President ZD's body. But she hasn't woken up. This problem is not related to her body, but to her soul. Her soul is in a coma. Maybe divine spells can wake President ZD up. Fat Tongue was anxious. Then let's go to a priest or a god. Don't forget, without President ZD, we wouldn't have escaped Puzzle Island. Sandow was expressionless. This kindness is true, and we won't forget it. But the shipwreck was also caused by President ZD. Without her, we wouldn't have fallen to Puzzle Island, right? Fat Tongue gritted his teeth. Our president must have her reasons. Mu Ban interjected. It's too risky to ask for the help of a priest. We're likely to attract the attention of the gods. After the shipwreck, a Templar knight and a priest of the Holy Church went missing. The Empire will definitely send people to search and investigate. The Hundred Needles clan will mobilize all their forces. I believe that search and rescue notices and bounties for these two lords must have been posted all over the coastal cities. The captains and crew members who come and go must have heard about it. We can't show our faces in public now. Baiya was puzzled. Don't we have the pearl foam? It's so powerful that even the holy monument was deceived. Song Su shook his head. The mermaid's fairy tale is a divine artifact, but we can't fully utilize its power. The real users of the divine artifact are the gods, not us extraordinaries. We don't have faith, nor the corresponding divine power, so the use of this divine artifact is very shallow and crude. Right now, we can only crush the pearl foam to resist divination and prophecies. We can't even change our own appearance. This doesn't match the description of this item. There's another piece of bad news about this. I don't know if you've noticed, but the pearl foam in this big shell is getting less and less. Lan Zhao was puzzled. No, it's still full of pearls. In the early days of using it, everyone found that the mermaid's fairy tale could produce its own pearl foam. Song Su sighed. It's indeed getting less and less. The production of new pearl foam is getting slower and slower. If this trend continues, one day in the future, we'll consume more pearls than we produce. I don't need to say more about the consequences, everyone should understand. On the second level of the Alchemy Center, there's a set of alchemy arrays dedicated to using this divine artifact. Unfortunately, the Tower Genie doesn't remember this set of alchemy arrays. Although everyone brought the Tower Genie back, the Tower Genie was very damaged and was the closest to ZD. In fact, no one could take away the Tower Genie in its complete state. The young knight frowned slightly and looked at Song Su. So how long can we hold on? I'm not sure. Song Su shook his head. It's hard to estimate. Maybe it's a long time, maybe it's a short time. It depends on the consumption. For example, right now we have to deceive the holy monument and continue to disguise ourselves. This consumption is obviously more than before. At this moment, everyone had a worried expression. Their current situation was as if they were running in an underground tunnel, and they were being chased by a ferocious beast that was often unbeatable. The pearl foam would become less and less, which meant that this underground tunnel was a dead end. Everyone had to find their own salvation during the time when they were being chased by the beast. Chapter 221. They had to be exonerated. That was the consensus of everyone. No one was naive and arrogant enough to think that they could fight against the Empire. Among this group of people, the strongest was only at the peak of silver. Not to mention the gods, legends, and saints, there were hundreds of them in the Empire, not to mention the gold-ranked extraordinaries. The Knights Templar, the Bloody Judgment Court, the major religions, the major magic academies, the major guilds, these were all forces that the Empire could mobilize. If the truth of the bewildering island was discovered in the future, everyone could only hope that the Empire would not pursue them. It was like an ant walking beside an adult's foot, but the adult disdained to step on it. But this possibility was very low. Because once the secret was exposed, the Empire would know that they had 2 artifacts and the alchemy skills of the war traffickers. This was not an ordinary ant, but an ant dragging a golden apple. The adult would be happy to stop and squat down to crush this little ant and pick up the golden apple. Just imagining the future of being wanted by the Empire was enough to make everyone feel terrified. Baya's face was full of worry. "I'm thinking, will the death of the Flame Dragon King be counted as our fault? After all, we did not save it at that time and let it be destroyed along with the bewildering island." Mu Ban shook his head. "We had to do this, otherwise we would not have survived until now. Once the Flame Dragon King escaped from the alchemy array, none of us would be able to escape and would be slaughtered by it. We negotiated with it, didn't we?" Lan Zhao comforted him. "The Empire should not know. We did not kill it personally, we used the alchemy array. That was the power of the war traffickers. So, as long as we do not say anything, the Empire cannot blame its death on us." The young knight fell into silence. After the execution of Scab, everyone had a debate on how to deal with the Flame Dragon King on the 4th floor of the Alchemy Center. Because time was tight, the young knight proposed to negotiate. Thus, everyone returned to the lava battlefield. But the negotiation with the Flame Dragon King did not go well. When the Flame Dragon King saw everyone return, it immediately understood that the war traffickers were dead. As arrogant as it was not willing to give the credit to these little bugs who took advantage of the situation. From its point of view, this was very reasonable. The war traffickers' death was caused by the powerhouses of the Bloody Judgment Court. The young knight's group of people just happened to be there. Moreover, these people wouldn't have come back to negotiate with him if they had any other choice. "You dregs have no choice at all. You want to negotiate with me? Ha ha ha, ridiculous. On what basis? Based on the fact that you're free now? Without my help, all of you will die. Even if you don't help me, I can still break free from this array, and you will have to face my wrath. Now, I order you to open the array and kneel down to beg for forgiveness. Perhaps if I'm in a good mood, I'll spare some of your lives." Ha! The negotiation with the Flame Dragon King had completely failed. While everyone was at a loss, the young knight suddenly suggested that they could try using the array to kill the Flame Dragon King. The reason why the warlord didn't make a move was because he wanted to capture this legendary magical beast alive. The warmonger was a goblin. He was greedy by nature. But the alchemy array actually had the ability to kill the Flame Dragon King. Everyone had no choice but to try. Thus, under the red light of the young knight's blood core, the Fire Dragon King's attitude changed drastically before it died. "No, no. You can't do this to me. You damned worm. Alright. I admit that you have the right to negotiate with me, we can have a good talk." The red light covered its entire body and quickly melted its body. The Flame Dragon King roared furiously and unleashed endless curses on the young knight. In the end, its bloodline essence was absorbed by the blood core and used by the young knight. During the process of killing the Flame Dragon King, the young knight hid it from everyone else. He concealed the fusion of the blood core, and continued to conceal the terrifying power of the blood core. As for the new draconian changes after leaving the island, he didn't explain, and there was no need to explain. The young knight was silent, and Zhong-gu was hesitating, because he had another channel that allowed him to get in touch with the upper echelons of the empire. That was his father. However, Zhong-gu didn't want to do this. Using this method, the merit obtained from offering the divine weapon was not the honor he wanted. He didn't need to think to know how his brothers and sisters would evaluate him. He was a lucky bastard. He got a great bargain. A sinister villain who killed the priest of the sacred sect and attacked his own companions. The success that Zhong-gu needed was definitely not this. He needed outstanding military achievements, he needed to make everyone shut up, and he needed glory that could not be questioned and slandered. There was another point. If he went through his father's channel, he didn't have the confidence to let these people live. He should be able to keep his life, after all, he was his father's son. But what about these people? Will father make a great contribution to let these people off the hook? Zhong-gu felt that there was little hope in this. He knew his father. So, this half-beast said, "Everyone, I have a different idea. Always thinking about getting off the hook, this is too negative. Think back, how difficult it was for us to go through fire and water on the Lost Island. We didn't really mean to kill Scab and the Flame Dragon King. We've just been forced into a corner. The facts proved that our choice was right, and we have to thank our captain for this. Otherwise, we would have been abandoned by Scab, slaughtered by the Flame Dragon King, or destroyed together with the island. The upper echelons of the Empire see us the same way they see the ants at their feet. Has everyone forgotten Scab's attitude and the Flame Dragon King's attitude? These high and mighty experts won't acknowledge our efforts, and they won't listen to our words at all. We shouldn't give up our gains. Although we can only make use of a little of these two divine artifacts, just this little bit of power is already so powerful. Are you willing to give up on them like this? Everyone was silent. Zhong-ji's words hit the bottom of their hearts. No one was willing, but what could they do? Now there is an opportunity in front of us, Zhong-gu said. The substitute raised his eyebrows. You mean the pirate god? Zhong-gu nodded and looked at them frankly. Using the pearl bubbles can only delay for a while. We will be discovered sooner or later. I am very much in favor of atonement, because everyone knows that we can't resist the Empire. Even if we escape for a while, we have to hide our names and live in fear all day. Who is willing to live such a life? An atonement is risky. Our biggest reason is that we don't have enough strength. Imagine, if we are legends, how will the Empire treat us? The upper echelons will definitely try to recruit us. If these two artifacts are what they need, they will choose to trade with us. In fact, they have much more artifacts than we do. And if we become gods? If we become the Pirate King, we can even negotiate and cooperate with the Empire to a certain extent. Bai Ye's eyes widened. Become gods? With just us? Sandow nodded and supported Zhong-gu. In fact, the fourth Pirate King was only a gold rank extraordinary. Bai Ye was curious. Is there such a thing? Song-su nodded. He was assassinated not long after he became the Pirate King. Even if he becomes a god, the use of divine power varies from person to person. Bai Ye, Song-su, however, this is indeed a very good idea. The leader of the 100 Needles clan is a line, and we can connect with the Empire's spies. We may not be able to become the Pirate King in the end. To be honest, this possibility is too small. But we can use the Empire's support to strengthen ourselves as much as possible. The credit we gain will be an important bargaining chip for our future atonement, and it can show our loyalty to the Empire. We can't show our faces in public now. There must be a lot of people investigating our tracks. Disguising as an island and wandering in the vast sea can minimize the risk of exposure. If the atonement fails, we can continue to live as pirate. This will be our last way out. Hearing Tsang Su's last sentence, the young knight, Zhong Gu, Bai Ye, and the others frowned subconsciously. No one wanted to become a pirate, but Tsang Su was right. This was a way out. 006 is a key figure and needs to be controlled. We have to let him follow us all the time, Mu Ban suggested. How should we deal with the dust? Sparrowfan asked. Tsang Su's eyes were cold. Kill him. He knows his name is still first on the holy monument. The secret of the fairy tale of the mermaid is likely to be exposed because of him. We can't bear the consequences. Zhong Gu stroked his chin. Gold Chin and Sea Snake Woman can be absorbed. Sandow nodded with a rather complicated expression. We need people on the outside. As for loyalty, a magic contract can solve this problem. With 006, we can let the Empire provide, Fat Tongue said. One man's wisdom was short, while the others were long. Strength was power. Everyone's words determined the fate of others. Chapter 222. 10 days later. Strong winds blew across the surface of the sea. A cannonball the size of a washbasin tore through the air, making a sharp whistling sound. It then brushed past the side of the gray rat and fell into the sea. Asterisk boom. Asterisk with a loud explosion, the cannonball fell into the sea, stirring up waves as tall as 3 people. His entire body was covered in dust, and his face was covered in cold sweat. The soft and clean gray fur that he usually cleaned was now stuck together. Fortunately, he had dodged the cannonball just now. Otherwise, the gray rat would have been heavily damaged. Asterisk boom boom boom. Asterisk the cannonballs behind him never stopped. Most of the cannonballs fell into the sea and exploded into pillars of water. The gray rat swam among these pillars of water. This ship was Gray's treasure. He had invested almost all his wealth into it. The gray rat was a black iron-grade magical ship. It was best at short-distance acceleration and sharp turns. With Gray at the helm, the gray rat was like a rat on the surface of the sea. It was extremely slippery, and it successfully dodged most of the cannonballs. However, Gray was getting more and more nervous. The pressure in his heart was increasing. The pursuers behind him were far stronger than him. The cannonballs were neither fast nor slow. It was like a cat playing with a mouse, controlling the situation. It was a warship that looked like a giant whale. The entire hull was at least 3 times the size of the gray rat. The bow of the ship was round, like a giant whale floating on the sea. Unlike the gray rat and other pirate ships, this ship did not have a mast. In the middle was a 3-story building. It was a ship with 3 towers. At the top of the ship was a huge bathtub. The water in the bathtub was bubbling. Surprisingly, it was boiling water. A person was lying on his back in the bathtub. His arms were on the edge of the bathtub, and his back was leaning against the inside of the bathtub. He was resting with his eyes closed. There were 2 beautiful women behind him who were massaging his thick shoulders with all their might. The hot steam and the massaging made the 2 women so tired that they were covered in sweat. The sweat stuck their clothes and skin together, making the women's curvy figures even more obvious. Harder, harder, the person in the bathtub requested. The 2 women gritted their teeth and tried to exert more strength, but they were powerless. It was already very difficult for them to last until now. Trash! The person in the bath immediately became angry. He swung his fat arm, and a gust of wind blew, sweeping the 2 women away. The 2 women screamed and fell from the top floor of the building to the deck. They died almost at the same time. Captain! The first mate ran to the roof and immediately knelt on the ground. The captain, who was taking a bath, snorted and opened his eyes slightly in displeasure. "Didn't I say not to disturb me when I'm taking a bath?" The first mate's body shook violently, his voice trembling from fear. Captain, we have successfully surrounded them. The gray rat is about to be captured. Very good. The captain stood up and stepped out of the huge bathtub. Bang, bang, he walked barefoot on the rooftop, and every time his feet landed, he could feel the vibration of the rooftop. Amidst the steam, a pair of millstone-like legs suddenly stretched out. The first mate lowered his head even more. A huge shadow gradually covered him. This little rat is quite good at running. The captain stood in front of the first mate and looked into the distance and snorted. The first mate quickly said, "Everything was planned by you, sir. You cleverly arranged the other ships to form an encirclement. It's funny and pitiful that he's covered in dust. He actually thought that he could escape from you, sir." "Is that so? Why do I remember that our ship's speed was not as fast as the gray rat, and I was very angry, so I sent a message to the others to surround them from all directions." The captain touched his chin. The first mate immediately broke out in cold sweat. At this time, the lookout shouted, "The gray rat entered the Cape of Sea Rocks." They entered the reef. Humph, still want to escape. The captain was unhappy. Strange, why is there a large group of reefs here? Who was the one who set up the chase plan? How could they be so stupid that they didn't even consider the reefs? The first mate panicked. This was obviously the captain's plan, but at this time, even if the first mate had 10 more guts, he would not dare to say it. But the captain did not let him go. His face was sinister and filled with killing intent. "Were you the one who set up the chase plan?" The first mate stammered. Boom. In the next moment, the captain raised his foot and stomped the first mate into the floor of the roof. The first mate was an iron rank cultivator. He tried his best to circulate his fighting aura, but it was useless. He was stomped into a bloody pulp by the captain. "Where's the second mate?" the captain roared. The second mate scrambled up to the roof, his entire body almost touching the roof. "As Sir Captain, I am here, at your command. Tell me, who was the one who set up this chase plan? Who actually let the gray rat enter the reefs?" The captain angrily rebuked. The second mate cried, "Sir Captain, all of this was your plan." The captain frowned, his face dark. "Why don't I remember? Sir Captain, you're so busy every day. It's normal for you to forget such small things." The second mate felt that he was not far from death. Suddenly, he had a flash of inspiration and blurted out, "Your plan was perfect. Now that the gray rat has no choice but to hide in the reefs, our people can easily surround the reef. They definitely won't be able to escape. But how are we going to capture them?" The captain frowned. "My bathtub won't be able to enter," the second mate hurriedly said. "We can use a small boat or a lifeboat to enter. The gray rat can't even protect itself. By the time we arrive, it might have already hit the reefs and sunk." "Ha!" The captain suddenly laughed. His anger from before had completely disappeared, as if everything was just an illusion. "Let's do it. Little ones, let's go kill Full of Ashes and take the treasure. I want my name, Hidden Meat, to be hung on the first place of the sacred monument." The captain roared. Yes. The pirates on the ship roared in response. Full of Ash's current situation was indeed not good. Throw out the water and food, as well as the goods. We'll only keep the weapons and medicine. Full of Ashes roared, his voice becoming hoarse. One by one, wooden barrels containing rum and food were thrown into the sea. One by one, wooden crates containing goods also fell into the sea. Without these things, the gray rat's waterline quickly dropped. The entire hull floated up, providing more chances to avoid hitting the reef. Full of Ashes was extremely nervous. He knew that even so, the gray rat was still very dangerous. There was a possibility that it could hit the reefs and be destroyed at any time. Because this was the famous sea stone point. The reefs here were extremely hard and protruded out of the sea. The surface of the reefs was not smooth and round. Instead, it was strangely jagged, as if it had been cut by a knife or an axe. It was very sharp. Even after a long period of rising and falling tides, the edges and corners of these reefs were not worn away. This was because the material of these reefs was very special and of very high grade, reaching the level of a saint. However, it was very difficult to mine. The cost of forcibly mining was extremely high, and the gains did not make up for the losses. The bad news was that the gray pirate ship was of the black iron grade. But the good news was that Full of Ashes' bathtub was of a higher grade. It was of the silver grade. Now, due to the fierce reputation of Sea Stone Point, Full of Ashes' group chose to stop the pirate ship and use a small boat to break in. "Captain, their ships are here," the lookout shouted. Full of Ashes looked into the distance and saw that Full of Ashes ships were surrounding Sea Stone Point from all directions. If the Grey Rat escaped, it would definitely be entangled by these pirate ships. It would be extremely difficult to escape successfully. Full of Ashes quickly retracted his gaze. He was not worried about these pirate ships, because these ships had also stopped outside the group of reef. He was most worried about Full of Ashes. "Sir, they have launched an attack." The lookout shouted again. "How many?" Full of Ashes' heart tightened and he quickly asked. The lookout immediately replied, "Many, at least 100 pirates came down from the bathtub. Full of Ashes is at the front. Other than that, there are many small boats from other pirate ships. They are also full of pirates." Full of Ashes took a deep breath and forced himself to use the calmest tone possible to order, "Don't go any deeper. Drop anchor here. Use the cannons to bombard them. Don't hold back. Fire all the cannons." Yes. The pirates were forced into a desperate situation, but their morale was still there. Full of Ashes' prestige in the hearts of his subordinates was very high. Chapter 223. The cannons on both sides of the Grey Rat's hull were opened. Behind each cannon was a small cannon. The cannons on the Grey Rat were not big. The bigger the cannon, the heavier it was. The Grey Rat had strict requirements for the load of a pirate ship. If there were too many cannons and the Grey Rat carried too much weight, it would be difficult for it to display its short-distance acceleration and agility. The pirates began to assemble the cannons. There were at least 4 pirates working on each cannon. 2 of them carried the cannons, while the third was near the cannon and stuffed the cannons into the muzzles. Then, the third and fourth pirates pushed the cannons out together. Each cannon had a pair of wheels that could be pushed. The front half of the cannons quickly poked out of the muzzles. The pirates placed a burning torch on the fuse, and the fuse was quickly burned out. With a boom, the gunpowder at the back of the cannon exploded, erupting with a powerful thrust. Under the push of this force, the cannons whistled and flew out. On the other side, a large number of pirates rowed on small boats and quickly approached the Grey Rat. "Fire!" A pirate saw white smoke suddenly rising from the Grey Rat and hurriedly shouted a warning. Then, cannons flew over one after another. Some fell into the sea, causing huge water pillars. Some fell on the reef, only smashing a few pieces of the reef. Some fell on the small boats and killed the unlucky ones on the spot. The small boats were broken into 2, and the surviving pirates fell into the water. "Ah!" The pirates who fell into the water screamed. Countless piranhas lived in Cape Haystack. Because of the unique material of the reef, it could absorb a large amount of salt, causing the seawater here to be close to fresh water. Soon, the water was dyed red with blood. Countless piranhas swung their tails in the blood waves, fighting with each other for the flesh and blood of the pirates. They crazily bit and tore at each other, causing countless splashes. The pirates were beaten up by the Grey Rat's cannons and became even more ferocious. They roared and rowed even harder. Although the reef surrounded them, the pirates' skills were not bad. The waterline of the small boats was shallower, and they moved nimbly among the reefs. There were only 2 exceptions. These 2 boats were larger than ordinary lifeboats. There were 4 pirates in each boat, and their physiques were also stronger than ordinary pirates. They rowed crazily, but the two boats moved slowly. The reason for this was Meat Horde. He stepped on a small boat, and his body was more than 3 meters tall. He was extremely fat, like a mountain of meat. Because he was only wearing a pirate's coat and a pair of white trousers, his huge belly and all the fat on his body could be seen at a glance. Many layers of fat were stacked on top of each other, making people feel horrified and disgusted. The huge weight of Musashi made it difficult for the small boat to bear, and both sides of the boat were almost submerged by the sea water. They were the first to set off, but they soon fell behind. The 8 pirates paddled with all their might, but they could only watch as the other pirates overtook them. "Too slow, did you guys not eat?" Hidden Meat was very dissatisfied. The 8 pirates shuddered and began to paddle frantically. Their speed finally increased a little. Boom, boom, boom. The cannons fired again and again, and after the shells flew out of the muzzle, the reaction force caused the cannons to shrink back a distance. The pirates took the opportunity to clean up the muzzles and reload. At first, they used solid bullets. The bombardment continued for a while. As the enemy pirates were closer, they switched to grape bullets. After the shells flew out, they would scatter, creating a scattershot effect. The change of shells, and the close distance, caused the accuracy of the cannons to increase rapidly. The pirates on Meat Horde's side suffered heavy losses, and their morale began to weaken. Many small boats sank halfway, and the smoke of gunpowder filled the air above the reef. Wooden fragments of different sizes floated on the sea surface, and the corpses of the pirates were quickly reduced to white bones in the fight between the piranhas. "Little ones, continue to charge," Meat Horde shouted. His voice was extremely loud, and spread throughout the battlefield. The pirates under his command suddenly quivered, and the battle cries that had just weakened rose again. The general was the soul of the army. As long as Meat Horde was there, the morale of the pirates would be guaranteed, and there would not be a situation where they were directly defeated after being bombarded by cannons. Looking at Meat Horde in the distance, his heart became more and more serious. He was a silver extraordinary, and the opponent's life level was as high as gold. Meat Horde was not a subordinate of the 3 legendary pirates, but he began to roam the sea decades ago, and his brutal reputation could make children stop crying. Hart was very clear that if he fought with Meat Horde, there was no hope of victory at all. The strength gap between the two sides was too big. But this time, I'm not alone. Hart secretly rejoiced. He saw 3 pirate ships appear in the distant sea. It was Chin, Snake Woman, and Sea Snake Woman's Silver Sea Snake disguised as a pirate ship. "Meat Horde Sama, please be merciful." Sea Snake Woman's voice spread through magic and resounded throughout the battlefield. "We have no intention to be enemies with you." Then Gold Chin's voice came, and his attitude was tough. "We are subordinates of Flamebeard, members of the Brother Pirates. Meat Horde, do you want to fight with the Flamebeard pirates?" There was a commotion among the pirates on the boat. A group of little kids. Meat Horde sneered disdainfully and immediately shouted, "Continue to attack." The pirates responded. "Our reinforcements are here." Hart shouted on the deck to boost his morale. The 3 pirate ships rushed to Cape Seashore, and they were all very fast. Meat Horde's fleet began to separate a group of pirate ships in an attempt to intercept Gold Chin and Sea Snake Woman. The distance between the two sides quickly closed, and they fired almost at the same time. Bang! 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 A large number of cannonballs crossed the air and fell around the enemy ship. "The wind is not good. They are following the wind," the first mate reported to Sea Snake Woman. Sea Snake Woman gritted her teeth and took out a magic scroll from her arms. After unfolding it, she instilled her mana and cast a wind spell. The wind suddenly blew, and the sails of Snake Woman and Chin were swollen. The cannonballs also increased their range a lot under the blessing of the wind. "Let them know how powerful we are. Guys, open the bow cannons." Golden Chin chuckled and ordered loudly. Soon, the unique trapezoidal bow of Qin began to slowly descend. The trapezoidal slope sank apart, revealing the 3 cannons inside. These 3 cannons were quickly pushed out by the pirates, and the muzzles of the cannons with large caliber extended out of the bow, braving the wind and waves. "Fire!" Gold Qin ordered, and the 3 cannons at the bow of the ship suddenly lit up with rings of light. These rings of light overlapped from the tail of the cannon all the way to the front of the muzzle. Then, hundreds of rings of light collapsed together, and a specially made cannonball flew out from the muzzle. The cannonball flew high into the sky, and then fell in a parabola. The white smoke emitted by the cannonball drew 3 long smoke trails in the sky. "It's Gold Qin's cigar cannon. Dodge!" It's too late, the Meat Horde's pirates were in chaos. The specially made cannonballs landed on the decks of the 3 pirate ships and exploded. The explosion set off a powerful shockwave, and dozens of people were sent flying. One of the pirate ships was directly paralyzed on the spot, and the speed of the other 2 ships dropped sharply. It was obvious that they had suffered heavy casualties. "Ha ha ha!" Gold Qin laughed proudly. His pirate ship was also a black iron-level magic ship. It was weaker than the Grey Rat in terms of flexibility and speed, but it was stronger in terms of attack and defense. Especially these 3 cigar cannons, they were all silver alchemy cannons. When they were dealing with the Grey Rat, Gold Qin was worried about the safety of the treasure, so he did not rashly fire. He was afraid that the Grey Rat would hide the treasure again, so he planned to capture the Grey Rat alive. As a result, he fell in the hands of the young knight and Zhong-gu. Gold Qin began to show his true strength, and the Sea Snake Woman cast spells one after another. After a while, the 2 joined forces to defeat the pirate ship that was blocking them. Although Meat Horde was a powerful gold warrior, he did not have a silver warrior under his command. The bronze and black iron-level elites were basically participating in the attack on the Grey Rat. The members who stayed on the pirate ship were generally weak. This made Gold Qin and the Sea Snake Woman invincible, and soon they were near Cape Rock. "Meat Horde-sama, what should we do?" The newly appointed first mate looked worried. The timing of Gold Qin and the Sea Snake Woman's appearance was too good, and most of the Meat Horde pirates were on the way to attack the Grey Rat. At the moment they were in an awkward situation. If they insisted on attacking, it was likely that all of their pirate ships would be sunk. At that time, not to mention the elite pirates, even if Meat Horde himself did not have a pirate ship, it was basically impossible for him to fight alone at sea. Gold Do-Chi could not support him to fly across the sea, and he also needed to rest, eat, and recuperate. "Damn it!" Meat Horde's face was ferocious and he was furious. "You all go back and guard my bathtub. I will personally kill the Grey Rat." The pirates obeyed and turned their boats around. Only the 2 boats under Meat Horde's feet were struggling to carry his huge fat body, and they were still attacking the Grey Rat. The cannons were constantly bombarding him. The 8 pirates on the boat were buzzing in their ears, and the water column rose and fell again and again around them. The splashing water drenched them over and over again. The cannonballs were constantly hitting Meat Horde's body. Meat Horde's body was full of fat, and the cannonballs were embedded in his fat and immediately bounced back. The cannonballs that bounced back were even faster and more powerful, and the Grey Rat was blown into pieces, and the ship was riddled with holes. "Stop shooting!" The Grey Rat could only give such an order. The cannonballs had to stop. Meat Horde saw this and laughed, very pleased. But in the next moment, dozens of alchemy crossbow bolts shot towards him. Meat Horde stared fiercely. He did not want to take these alchemy crossbow bolts head-on. These crossbow bolts could explode, burn, emit frost, and were highly toxic, and he would be at a disadvantage if he took them head-on. The consumption of Do-Chi was far greater than that of the cannonballs. In the next moment, Meat Horde's whole body spewed out gold Do-Chi. The Do-Chi carried him into the air. The 8 pirates on the 2 boats that were left behind all screamed in shock. Immediately, they were covered by the alchemy crossbow bolts, and after a series of explosions, they were all turned into dust. The grey rat, come forward and die. Meat Horde in the air adjusted his direction, and like a mammoth, he dove towards the deck of the grey rat. The grey rat was not afraid at all, and with a thin sword in hand, he waited on the deck. Just as Meat Horde was about to land on the deck, two figures suddenly flew out from the shadows. One was a beastman, and the other was a human youth. Together with the grey rat, the three of them attacked Meat Horde together. Chapter 224. It turned out that Zhonggu and the young knight had been hiding on the grey rat for a long time and had been waiting patiently. So there was an ambush. Seeing the unexpected attack, Flesh Secret frowned. Golden Do Chi gushed out, causing his body to stop abruptly in midair. His ferocious charging momentum came to an abrupt halt. Zhonggu and the young knight's attack could not reach far, so a body in Grey's fighting skill, Grey Fog Wave, rushed forward. However, the thick fog could not cover Flesh Secret's huge body at all. As the fog began to corrode Flesh Secret's body, this Gold Elite suddenly roared and unleashed his fighting skill, Flesh Sea Ripple. The fat on his body kept rolling, one after another, like a tidal wave. After brewing for 3 seconds, his entire body suddenly shook violently, forming a powerful vibration that swept out in all directions with him as the center point. Zhonggu, the young knight, a body in grey, and the others had been waiting for a long time and had activated their combat chi. However, when the ripple came, the three of them were shocked. They only felt that the ripple was powerful and strange. Not only did it attack the silver combat chi's defense, but it also drove their muscles, causing their muscles to oppress their bones and organs. Puff, puff. The three of them almost vomited blood at the same time and were swept away by the ripple. A body in grey crashed into the mast. The young knight and Zhonggu were blocked by the side of the ship and almost fell into the sea. Without any obstruction, Flesh Secret slowly landed on the deck, like a god descending to the earth. At this moment, the power of a Gold Elite was revealed without a doubt. Zhonggu and the young knight's ambush had once put Gold Chin, a transcendent at the peak of the Silver Elite, into a fatal crisis. However, when it came to Flesh Secret, the latter cleverly and forcefully broke through it. This guy can actually fly. Covered in dust, he opened his mouth and took a few deep breaths before he finally caught his breath. For transcendents who cultivated combat chi, if they reached the Silver Elite, their combat chi would be able to protect their body. If they reached the Gold Elite, their combat chi would be able to leave their body for a while. Once they reached the Gold Elite, their attack range would increase greatly, and their attack methods would become much more varied. However, not all gold-ranked agents could fly. Only a small number of Do Chi arts and Do Chi arts could achieve the effect of flight. Among them, there were also small differences such as short-distance flight, long-distance flight, floating, and so on. So there are 3 little mice. Your luck is really bad. You just happened to meet me at the time when I achieved great success in my battle chi. Ha ha! Fleshless cackled. His eyes were filled with murderous intent. Battle skill, sword edge assault. Zhongji's attack interrupted Shinzo's grin. Zhonggu held the sword with both hands and placed the hilt on the right side of his waist. The entire body of the two-handed sword was straight forward, perpendicular to Zhongji's upright body. The tip of the greatsword was pointed straight at Flesh. After charging for 5 seconds, Zhongji's silver combat chi exploded. His speed skyrocketed, and he became one with his sword. Like a knight, he charged towards Shinzo with his sword. The distance of a dozen steps was quickly covered. Zhonggu used all of his strength, and there was even a hint of golden luster at the tip of the greatsword. Good sword, Zhonggu praised. He knew the power of this sword. If he tried to block it, he would be cut in half. There would be no other result. However, Flesh didn't dodge. Instead, he stuck out his huge belly. He seemed to be using his belly as a shield to block Zhongji's attack. The maned halberd pierced Shinzo, but his expression suddenly changed. The tip of the greatsword stabbed into Flesh's belly, but it was blocked by a thick layer of golden combat chi. Flesh on Flesh's belly was rolling, and it was constantly shrinking. With the tip of the greatsword as the center, it was like a layer of wave. The waves of flesh completely dispersed the force of Zhongji's charge. It spread all over Flesh's body, and the latter's hair stood on end. Zhonggu felt like he had stabbed into a ball of soft dough. The feeling of weakness made him want to vomit. Such a powerful attack was easily neutralized by Flesh. Zhonggu immediately wanted to retreat. But Flesh was an experienced fighter, and he didn't miss this opportunity. Fighting technique, fleshy palm. Flesh raised his left palm. Suddenly, golden combat chi gushed out and condensed into a golden palm the size of a basin. Flesh's body trembled slightly. The power that had just been dispersed by Zhongji's fighting technique surged back into his body. Meat Muse's skin and flesh began to tremble again, as if it was going back the same way it came. However, this time, the energy did not gather in his stomach, but instead, it was channeled into his golden do chi palm. The palm suddenly shot out and hit Zhonggu right in the middle. Zhonggu was not only hit by fleshy palm, but also by the power of his fighting technique sword edge assault. His whole body was sent flying like a cannonball. Spitting out a mouthful of blood, his back slammed into the side of the ship. Without any pause, he directly pierced through the side of the ship. Then, with a splash, he fell into the sea. Zhonggu was already at the peak of silver. But in a one-on-one fight with Flesh, he couldn't even last one round. Flesh's fighting power was far beyond the young knight's intelligence. Flesh gritted his teeth and hurriedly activated his fighting technique, Gray Fog Sky. Thus, the deck of the Gray Rat was shrouded in a gray cloud, covering everyone. This was Flesh's unique fighting technique. It not only consumed his combat chi, but also his hair. He was a silver fighter. His hair was not simple. It could be considered a silver magic material. Because of this, the Gray Fog Sky fighting technique had a unique effect. The gray fog was extraordinary. If a silver-level life form entered it, their vision and perception would be greatly limited. Of course, Flesh was an exception. Using the cover of the gray fog, a body of gray quietly approached the body behind the body, raised his sword, and stabbed. The thin sword was aimed at Flesh's huge fat butt. Flesh didn't notice. Seeing the thin sword was about to pierce through, suddenly, as if an invisible pressure had arrived in advance, it made Flesh's butt sink a little. Although this dent was imperceptible, the Flesh was still very sensitive. He suddenly turned around and punched with his right fist. Flesh's heart was palpitating with fear. He hurriedly retreated to dodge. With a loud bang, Bunzo's fist smashed into the deck, and directly smashed a hole in the deck. His entire body was covered in dust as he jumped back on his tiptoes. Splashing wood pieces brushed past his face. In less than a breath's time, he hid in the gray fog again. His life force was restrained to the extreme. Flesh's body lost its target again. Flesh's body was covered in cold sweat. In the confrontation just now, he walked on the edge of death. In order to get close to Flesh, he didn't use any fighting technique. But Flesh's sense of touch was also very sensitive. Even though his vision was limited by the gray fog, his sense of touch allowed him to put an end to this kind of assassination. Fighting technique, Flesh Sea Ripple. Flesh's body once again used his fighting technique. Air billowed, sweeping away the gray fog on the ship. But when his vision suddenly became clear, the young knight's figure suddenly appeared on his left. Fighting technique, 100 Needles. Countless sword shadows bloomed in an instant. The silver-white combat chi attached to the tip of the sword made the young knight's attack even sharper. Flesh's body roared. He just used a fighting technique, so his combat chi was weakening. Using a fighting technique to defend himself was very difficult. The young knight took advantage of this opportunity. Flesh's only choice was to use his golden combat chi to cover his left arm. He straightened his left arm, and his fat arm formed a temporary shield. If it was Zhonggu who attacked, he would have also failed. But silver lightning wasn't a normal weapon. The sharp edge of the sword pierced through the golden combat chi, drawing blood. Flesh's left arm protected his face, while his right hand was preparing a fighting technique. After 3 breaths, he used Flesh's flip palm again. But the young knight was already prepared. He dodged ahead of time, causing Flesh's attack to miss. He's injured. Flesh's spirit was lifted. Up until now, although it's only been a few rounds, he felt like every second was like a year. Flesh's fighting strength was far beyond the rumors, giving Flesh's group a lot of pressure. Flesh's body couldn't help but regret. If he knew this would happen, he wouldn't have set up such a trap. Nice sword. Flesh's body looked at his bloody left arm and grinned. Flesh waves surged from his body again. The flesh waves covered his left arm, and the holes on his left arm immediately closed. The bleeding stopped almost instantly. Then the tightly closed wounds started to heal at a speed visible to the naked eye. Fighting technique, flesh bud. Flesh's body and Flesh's face changed as they saw this. Flesh's actually mastered an extremely rare, healing fighting technique. This means that as long as he still has combat chi, he can fight without any injuries. This is really despairing. We can't let him heal. Flesh's body shouted and rushed out. Flesh's body also gritted his teeth and cooperated with him from the other side. The two of them surrounded Flesh's body and attacked him non-stop. Flesh's body stood still, blocking left and right. He had the complete upper hand. Flesh's body and Flesh's attacks couldn't stop Flesh's healing. Boom! In the middle of the battle, Zhonggu suddenly came out from the hole on the deck and caught Flesh's body off guard. But Flesh's body took a hit from the two-handed sword and bounced Zhonggu back again. The 3 of them surrounded Flesh's body and attacked him non-stop. Flesh's body moved slowly. Each attack made Flesh's body jump up and down. Occasionally, someone would be sent flying. Grey Rat was a black iron ship, but even it couldn't withstand such a battle. Soon, all of the masts were broken, the deck was full of holes, and only half of the rudder was left. My ship. Flesh's body was disheartened. The battle was getting more and more dangerous. Flesh's body was getting bigger and bigger. Flesh's body was getting bigger and bigger. The knight gritted his teeth and took out his alchemy crossbow, aiming at Flesh's body and shooting. Originally, Flesh's body was a little afraid of Grey Rat, but now, he had to use all his strength to have a chance of winning. It was very difficult for Flesh to dodge. His body was huge and heavy, and the distance between them was so close. In a moment, the alchemy arrows hit Flesh's body one after another, and Flesh could only rely on his golden combat chi to resist. Flesh's body continued to shoot. He was equipped with 4 alchemy crossbows. These crossbows were all alchemy products of the war traffickers. The crossbows were a set of arrows. After shooting, the crossbows had intricate carvings on them that could guide new arrows to float up and automatically load and pull the bowstring. In a moment, Flesh's body was suppressed by the young knight's arrows for the first time. Flesh's body twitched as he watched. The explosion of the alchemy arrows destroyed Grey Rat again and again. Flesh's body felt like his heart was bleeding. Chapter 225. Shinzo was extremely powerful. He was a veteran golden warrior, and the strength he displayed in this battle was far beyond what the public knew of him. The young knight, Zhonggu, and Ash were easily suppressed by him. But Shinzo was not without weaknesses. The most obvious one was that he had no equipment on him. His fists and feet were his weapons. He was only wearing a pair of trousers, and the captain's uniform had long been abandoned by him at the start of the battle. His current state of clothing was close to being naked. This was something he had done on purpose, because his fighting skills were very special. If he was covered by clothes, it would hinder him from using them. But because of this, he did not have any normal defensive equipment. Facing the young knight's arrows, Shinzo could only use his golden do-chi to cover his body. But this was very disadvantageous. The young knight's arrows consumed a lot of Shinzo's do-chi. It took time to produce do-chi, and although his do-chi was large, it could not withstand such consumption. Once his do-chi was exhausted, although his body was strong, he would not be able to defeat the young knight, Zongu, and Ash, who still had do-chi. Shinzo was also aware of this, so he quickly took the arrows head-on and used his trump card. Fighting skill, Meat Mountain Giant. The do-chi in his body circulated wildly. 15 seconds later, he took a deep breath and the do-chi in his body exploded. Shinzo's body quickly expanded, especially his belly, which was like an inflated balloon, becoming incomparably large. He was already very tall, but now with the help of his fighting skill, he became a giant. His feet stepped on the sides of the ship, and the first deck of the ship narrowed by several times. The only remaining mast reached Shinzo's waist. Zongu and the others were even shorter than Shinzo's knees. What fighting skill is this? Ash was shocked. He had never heard of Shinzo having such a skill. Little mice, you are very lucky to be the first to see me in this form. Of course, it is also very unfortunate. Shinzo the giant grinned, and suddenly slapped his own belly with his palms. Fighting skill, Skin Drum. His stomach shook violently, emitting a terrifying bang, as if it was smashing into everyone's hearts. Bang, bang, bang. Giant Muzu then continued to strike. His voice stirred up translucent sound waves that swept across the battlefield. Zongu staggered, his face pale. Covered in dust, he half knelt on the ground and covered his ears. He was in great pain. The young knight's face was also red. He felt that all the muscles in his body were trembling under the effect of the drumming and were no longer under his control. Especially the heart. The beating of the heart was also due to the myocardium. Right now, his heart muscle was also affected by the drumbeat. It was beating wildly, bringing him a huge burden. After a few breaths, the young knight's ears were bleeding, and he was dizzy. The power of Meat Treasury's fighting skill was terrifying. After it was used, it would immediately kill the young knight and the other two. The three of them were silver-ranked fighters, but they were still in such a state. The Grey Rat pirates were even more miserable. The first beat of the drum had killed half of them. After 3 beats of the drum, the pirates were all dead. We can't let this go on. The young knight gritted his teeth and activated his blood core. Mana surged. There was a flash of red light. The young knight turned into a young draconid, with a dragon head, dragon scales, and dragon claws. But there was no dragon heart. The young draconid's face was full of pain. He was still being ruthlessly destroyed by the drumbeat. Roar. The young draconid used all his strength and let out a dragon roar. Disturbed by the dragon roar, Meat Treasury paused for a moment. The drumbeats stopped. Covered in dust, Zongu and the young draconid finally had a precious moment to breathe. Spell Whirlpool Cage. The next moment, seawater rose and quickly covered Meat Treasury's legs. The blue seawater kept spinning and formed 2 whirlpools, imprisoning Meat Treasury's legs. It was the Sea Snake Lady. Quick! The Sea Snake Lady half knelt on the Snake Lady and struggled to maintain this spell. Her face quickly became pale. It turned out that Gold Chin and the Sea Snake Lady had joined forces to defeat Meat Treasury's pirates and approach the battlefield. But seeing the situation between the young draconid and Meat Treasury, they did not dare to go deep into the reefs and had already made up their minds to retreat. The young draconid snorted. If Gold Chin and the Sea Snake Lady fought with all their strength, with the 5 of them, it was not impossible to defeat Meat Treasury. But since the 2 of them had such an attitude, they had to retreat. Immediately, the young Draconid ran to covered in dust and Zhonggu, put them under his armpits, and jumped off the gray rat ship. Zhonggu was already unconscious. My ship, covered in dust, was also unconscious. Seeing that he had left the gray rat ship, he suddenly woke up. There will be a chance in the future. The young Draconid comforted him casually, and kept jumping on the reefs with the two to distance themselves from Meat Treasury. Meat Treasury snorted coldly and broke free from the water spell. "You three little rats, where do you think you are going?" He roared loudly, and his voice shook the surroundings. Then, he slowly bent his knees and squatted down. Golden combat chi emerged and accumulated on his legs. The next moment, Meat Treasury's legs kicked hard, and the golden combat chi shot out, propelling him forward. The gray rat ship was hit by the terrifying force of his kick, and the ship sank and then tilted quickly, flipping over on the spot. The young Draconid was jumping between the reefs when he suddenly saw a shadow covering him. The shadow expanded rapidly. The young Draconid looked up, and his dragon pupils shrank. Meat Treasury was like a mountain, directly pressing down on the three of them. The ferocity and vastness of the aura made it difficult for Gold Chin, who was watching this scene, to breathe. The young Draconid tried his best to retreat, but with the two of them, his escape speed was always a hair's breadth behind. Meat Treasury sneered. He could already see the scene of the young Draconid being crushed by him. But the next moment, a water rope suddenly emerged from the sea and wrapped around the young Draconid's waist. Then it pulled hard. The young Draconid was only a hair's breadth away. With the help of the water rope, he narrowly avoided Meat Treasury's attack. The one who helped was the Sea Snake Lady. Previously, Gold Chin was besieged by the young knight, Zhonggu, and Ash An was in a desperate situation. It was her magic that allowed them to escape. Now, the young Draconid and the other two were also enjoying the same treatment. Meat Treasury missed and fell onto the reefs, splashing up huge waves. He angrily roared and used his battle skill, Fleshly Raft. Golden battle chi wrapped around his entire body. Although it was only a thin layer, it kept circulating. Meat Treasury stepped on the surface of the seawater only reaching his ankles. He continued to chase after the young Draconid and the other two. The young Draconid dodged left and right. He was in a precarious situation. The giant Meat Treasury's attacks were very fierce. His normal punches and kicks were comparable to silver battle skills. Fortunately, the Sea Snake Lady's water rope pulled at him from time to time. Only then was the young Draconid able to save his life with the two burdens. In the process of escaping, Zhonggu finally woke up. "Let me down, we'll split up and escape," Zhonggu immediately said. "No." The young Draconid refused. "I can still hold on for a while." Before he could even finish his sentence, Meatball had already unleashed another technique. Flesh piercing. The golden battle chi turned into fine needles, like a heavy downpour, covering the three young Draconid and the other two. The golden battle chi condensed into needles. As long as they pierced through the skin, they would immediately drill into the flesh of the three. The three young Draconid and the other two's muscles were instantly changed. They quickly crystallized, forming flesh spikes. As long as they moved a little, the flesh spikes would bring great pain. More importantly, the flesh spikes were still growing. If they were left alone, they would pierce into the internal organs of the body. If it really developed to this stage, a light injury would become a serious injury, or even a fatal one. Zhonggu and the dusty Shuang groaned in pain. The young Draconid was also hit by this battle skill. His whole body was covered in dragon scales, but they could not completely block the golden battle chi. The young Draconid staggered and fell down from the reef. Flesh Treasure chased after them relentlessly. It was right behind them. Because of this slight delay, the three youths fell into a desperate situation. Go! At this critical moment, the two young Draconid and the dusty Zhonggu were thrown away. he used this reaction force to speed up his descent into the water. As soon as he fell into the water, he kicked his legs and changed his direction in the water. Almost at the next moment, Meat Treasury's large foot stepped over, almost brushing past the young draconid's leg and stepping on empty air. A huge wave was created in an instant. The young draconid was not shocked but delighted by the impact. He desperately dived down. Meat Treasury hesitated for a moment and did not continue to pursue the young draconid. Instead, he attacked the dusty Schwang who was closest to him. Along the way, Meat Treasury was once again obstructed by water magic, but he crashed through it with a bang. The dusty Schwang had just climbed onto a reef and could no longer dodge. He could only watch as Meat Treasury used his battle skill on him. The golden battle chi condensed into a huge palm and slapped towards the Rat Man. The Rat Man closed his eyes and accepted his fate. But the next moment, he was involuntarily dragged by Zhonggu. The two of them dodged the huge palm of battle chi. The palm of battle chi landed on the reef and caused an explosion. Only a small part of the reef was blown off. The surging shockwave rushed over and sent Zhonggu and the dusty Schwang flying. Meat Treasury chased after them, but halfway through, he suddenly stopped in his tracks. To his left, the young draconid was already standing on a reef. His dragon mouth was constantly opening and closing, and he was speaking Draconic. He was casting a spell. Draconic spell, scorching dragon breath. A few seconds later, the spell chant was completed. The young draconid opened his mouth and spat out a scorching stream of flames. The stream of flames hit Meat Treasury, and the raging flames almost drowned him. Meat Treasury did not make a sound. Bathed in the flames, his body did not move. A few seconds later, he used his battle skill, Fleshy Flip Palm. A huge palm condensed from golden battle chi blasted towards the young draconid. The huge palm was still burning with dragon flames. The flames on Meat Treasury's body were now all gathered on the huge palm. The young draconid could only try his best to dodge. After his interference, Zhonggu and the dusty Schwang both stepped onto the chin. Soon after, the young draconid also arrived on the snake lady with the help of the water rope. Retreat! Retreat quickly! The sea snake lady hurriedly ordered. When Meat Treasury rushed back to the bathtub, the young draconid and the others had already put enough distance between them. With a displeased snort, Meat Treasury once again dived into the bathtub on the top floor and gave up the chase. Chapter 226. Xingming Continent. Military Harbor. The weather was clear and cloudless. The sky was clear and blue, without a trace of impurities. The sun shone on the surface of the harbor, emitting a diamond-like luster. A large number of warships were anchored at the harbor. These warships were huge and of the same shape. The sails were retracted, and the flag at the top of the mast was fluttering in the wind. The military harbor was not a trading harbor, but a military harbor specially opened by the Xingming Empire. To enter the harbor, one needed to pass through a narrow cliff gate. On both sides of the huge gate were towering sandstone cliffs. The cliffs were densely packed with cannons. Once the specially made strong gate was lowered, it could obstruct a gold-ranked magic ship. This place was easy to defend and hard to attack. The terrain itself was a natural haven. More than 100 years ago, the Xingming Emperor personally issued an oracle. The empire spent a lot of money to build the current military harbor. The military harbor was not only the largest naval base, but also the empire's highest naval academy. Duke Yentan was the person in charge of the military harbor. At the same time, he was also the principal of the naval academy. However, many times it was not easy for his subordinates to find him, such as now. After receiving 006 report, the spy needed to ask for instructions from the higher-up. "Sir Count." The spy bowed slightly. This was Yen Tan's study. However, the person in charge here was not the Duke, but the Empire's Count Wei Xing. Wei Xing had the appearance of a young man. He had a head of short golden hair. His hair was tough and straight, just like his personality, sharp and direct. His eyebrows were the most eye-catching. His golden eyebrows were long and thick. They were connected at the center of his eyebrows, then extended diagonally to the tip of his eyebrows and then to his forehead. Overall, his golden eyebrows looked like a big V. The window of the study was open. A gentle breeze with the smell of the sea blew in, occasionally ruffling the white curtains. The sea breeze could not ruffle Wei Xing's hair, nor could it ease the distress on his face. Damn it! Wei Xing secretly gritted his teeth. He did not sit in the wide back chair behind the desk. Instead, he sat on the sofa used for guests. Even the soft sofa didn't make this promising young man slack off in the slightest. This could be seen from his upright sitting posture. On the tea table between the sofa there was a chessboard. Wei Xing's eyes were locked on the chessboard. Light and shadow flickered on the chessboard as the armies formed by the various races fought against each other. It was the war chess. 1,000 years ago, this magic game originated from the Sacred Duchy. Now, the Sacred Duchy had become an empire and unified the entire sacred continent. War chess became the most popular game among the nobles in the empire. It's still not working. Why do I always lose to him? Wei Xing's lips were tightly pursed as he kept thinking about how to break out of this situation. He tried many methods, but in the end, he could only see his human navy retreating under the encirclement of the pirates. The wreckage of warships was left on the sea. Count! The spy reminded him again in a low voice. Wei Xing snorted and unhappily shifted his gaze from the chessboard to the spy. Speak, what's the matter? The spy's eyes suddenly shrank, and he didn't dare to look at Wei Xing. He quickly bowed his head and handed over a report with both hands. This is the latest report from 006. Their battle with the meat trove has ended. They have suffered heavy casualties and losses, and they are asking us for supplies. Wei Xing immediately remembered that about a week ago, 006 had sent a report that his line had undergone a drastic change. They had caught traces of the gray rat on the sea, but they had been defeated and captured. The reason for their defeat was the sudden appearance of two silver transcendents. These two people were called Long Fu and Lion Flag. They originally wanted to go to the wilderness continent, but the ship they were on encountered a shipwreck. While they were searching for treasures on the island, they secretly sneaked into the Grey Rat and succeeded in a sneak attack, subduing Long Fu. Long Fu stubbornly resisted to the end and didn't submit. Long Fu was attacked by Gold Chin and Sea Snake. The external crisis forced them to compromise and fight together. Long Fu attracted the main attention first, and he deliberately showed weakness to numb 006's side. In the end, he relied on Long Fu and Lion Flag's powerful battle power to win. Although 006 was captured, he heard Long Fu's words on the deck and risked exposing his identity, successfully persuading Long Fu and Lion Flag to participate in the Empire's secret mission. Long Fu had no choice but to rely on the Empire. 006 made a great contribution because of this. Long Fu seemed to have tasted the sweetness of two sneak attacks, so he didn't want to show his face directly. After discussing, they still used Long Fu as the leader on the surface and used him as bait. Soon, they lured him to meet Trove. They formulated a battle plan and planned to use the reefs at Sea Rock Point to build a trap to deal with Meat Trove's pirate. With the strength of the 5 silver transcendents, they should be able to take down Meat Trove. After the Navy staff officers learned of this, they also calculated based on the information and calculated that this battle plan was very likely to succeed. Therefore, the Navy used the Swift Eagle to urgently transport a batch of magic contract scrolls according to 006's request. So, they won? Wei Xing reached out. The spy hurriedly handed the report to him and replied, "No, sir, they lost." Wei Xing took the report. When he heard the result, he immediately lost the desire to read it. He placed the report next to the magic chessboard, frowned slightly, and stared at the chessboard again. They didn't kill Meat Trove? According to their combat strength, they actually have a high chance of winning. Do they think that they can trick the Empire into supporting them with a little fight? It's not like that, Count. We have discussed this battle, and have always thought that we can provide greater support to 006. For the specific battle report, please read it. The spy said. Wei Xing took the report again, and quickly browsed through it. He raised his eyebrows slightly, showing a touch of surprise. After a while, he muttered, according to 006's report, Meat Trove's strength has skyrocketed, and his combat strength is first class among the gold ranks. It's normal that they can't beat Meat Trove. Although they were defeated, they defeated more than a dozen ships of the Meat Trove pirate. The Meat Trove pirates lost a lot, and the entire fleet only has 6 ships left. It's indeed a battle achievement. The key is, the whole battle was actually only 3 silver and Meat Trove. Gold Chin and Sea Snake did not fully participate in the killing of Meat Trove. They still have potential. Well, they are indeed worthy of support. Wei Xing agreed with the spy's view. He suddenly asked, Have you found out the identity of Dragon Suit and Lion Flag? The spy froze for a moment and shook his head. Not yet. Haven't you found out, or haven't you investigated? Wei Xing asked. The spy said, Yes, there is no investigation. Wei Xing grunted and nodded, but he didn't criticize him. Because there was no investigation, it was not a dereliction of duty. Soon after these secret missions began, Yen Tan assigned Wei Xing to be fully responsible for this matter. Therefore, Wei Xing was very clear. Among the many spies, 006's line was actually very inconspicuous, even if they now had 5 silver. It must be known that the other spies were in contact with gold rankers and sanctuary rankers. The strength of the Empire was recognized by the world, plus the Empire's recruitment price was high, and pirates were usually mercenary. And those ambitious pirates were more willing to use the resources of the Empire to help themselves fight for the pirate god throne. Therefore, the other spies made great progress. If it wasn't for Gray's name suddenly being ranked first on the Holy Monument, Wei Xing would not have remembered 006's line. The reason for Gray's sudden rise in ranking, 006 had already reported. He had obtained the bone finger of the 4th-generation Pirate King. There were too many spies to be responsible for, tracking, and paying attention to. Wei Xing's manpower was actually very limited. Wasting precious manpower to investigate 2 silver rankers was not worth it. But Wei Xing always had an inexplicable feeling in his heart that it was necessary to investigate these 2 people. The spy asked, Count, do you need us to investigate them? Wei Xing shook his head. No need. There was no evidence to show that these 2 people were worth investigating. One of them was a beastman who had mastered military fighting skills. The other was White River Fighting Chi. The reason why he could manifest as a dragon man should be because of a mutation in his bloodline. They had cultivated to silver rankers and were traveling together to the wilderness continent to seek success in life. This situation was very common. In recent years, a large number of people had entered the wilderness continent. Among them were gold rankers who had failed to achieve their goals, and even sanctuary rankers who had been exiled. There were also many people who had hidden their identities and had ulterior motive. Dragon Robe and Lion Flag were not eye-catching. It's obvious that they were of low birth. Whether it's military fighting skills or White River Fighting Chi, they're all things that have been widely circulated. If they're given better equipment, fighting skills, and so on, their strength will be significantly improved. The Empire could even rope in pirates, let alone these 2 people. Thinking of this, Wei Xing made a decision. Deal with it this way, I approve. Let them go to Crescent Port to resupply. Understood, sir. The spy respectfully left. Chapter 227. The night was gentle. The moon hung high in the night sky, pouring down its light like water. The sea breeze blew gently, and the waves slapped against the white beach. The sound of the waves splashing against the white beach was deep and elegant. This was a nameless island. The Big Chin and the Snake Lady were docked on the nearby sea. This island was not suitable for ships to dock, and to prevent them from running aground, the two ships could only anchor near the island. There was still a day's journey to New Moonport, but the young knight ordered them to rest here for a night to replenish the water and food that had dropped to the alert level. In the afternoon, the pirates boarded several small boats and landed on this island. After a round of looting, they returned to the ships. The young knight stayed. In the night, he activated his blood core and turned into a dragon man. He began to chant. The tone of his language was deep and powerful. This was not the common language, but the dragon language. Dragon language magic. Scorching dragon breath. The next moment, the young dragon man opened his mouth and magic power gushed out, turning into a ball of flame in his mouth. Then this ball of flame quickly expanded and sprayed out, forming an inverted cone that covered the white beach in front of the young man. The flames roasted the beach for a few breaths. During this time, the young man tried to turn his head slightly, and the direction of the flames also changed accordingly. After the dragon breath ended, the beach was charred black, emitting a pungent odor. The young dragon man looked at the traces of the beach being roasted by the flames and sighed, not satisfied. Ever since he escaped from the Confusion Island, he had been practicing his dragonman form. Without a doubt, this was his strongest power. The bloodline of the Flame Dragon King was at the legendary level. The young man had absorbed all kinds of man-made magical beasts on the island, and even if they were added together, they could not compare to this bloodline. Among other things, just the memories attached to the bloodline allowed the young man to master the dragon language magic. From a magic idiot to a magic genius, the growth process of a dragon did not need to be deliberately learned. This powerful life form at the top of the food chain had a racial talent that made people jealous. They only needed to eat, drink, and sleep, and they could comprehend all kinds of powers in their natural growth process. The way to use these powers was rooted in their bloodline. The young knight benefited from this. So far I have mastered 3 spells. They are Dragon Roar, Dragon Might, and Scorching Dragon Breath. The first 2 require half a second and 1 second respectively, but the third requires 5 seconds. And this was the result of a lot of practice. In the beginning, the chanting time for these 3 spells was even longer. The first 2 already had extremely high combat value. The dragon's roar allowed the youth to deal damage to magic or special life forms, and it could often cause the target to enter a state of dizziness. Draconic Aura was the best weapon for the young man to fight against multiple enemies. As for Scorching Dragon's Breath, its casting time was the longest. One needed to grasp the opportunity to use it in battle. This was its drawback. But on the other hand, it also had an advantage that Dragon Roar and Dragon Might did not have. That was strength. The Scorching Dragon's Breath was extremely powerful. Basically, as long as it was used, almost no silver-ranked enemies would be able to withstand it. Even a gold-ranked expert would often have to bear the brunt of the attack. The only reason Manzo was able to withstand it was because he was considered a powerhouse among the gold rankers. But Dragon Breath still needs more practice. It would be best if you could shorten the chanting time. Secondly, I need to be more flexible in using it. The youth calculated in his mind. He was currently too focused on spitting dragon's breath. During the process, his body could only stand still on the spot. This was obviously a huge flaw. Secondly, if he chose to spit in one direction, it would be very difficult to change the direction of the spit during the process. Once he changed direction, just like what he had just practiced, the dragon's breath would become very unstable, sometimes large and sometimes small, and the suppression would be greatly weakened. These were all areas that the youth needed to work on improving. It's not right for you to practice like this. Suddenly, a voice was heard. In the air, a graceful figure gradually appeared. It was the sea snake lady. Tonight, she did not wear leather clothes. Instead, she changed into a blue dress. The circular neckline was wide open, revealing a deep cleavage on her snow-white chest. Set off by the wavy hair on both sides, she looked even more alluring. The Draconid youth's eyes narrowed slightly. The sea snake lady's invisibility magic was very amazing. If she did not intentionally go invisible, the Draconid youth would not have noticed it. "What's wrong?" the youth asked. The sea snake lady slowly descended and landed lightly on the ground. Then, she strode leisurely toward the Draconid youth. Her eyes were fixed on the youth. Her mature, curvaceous body completely exuded her feminine charm, as if it were a kind of magic that was captivating. The Draconid youth's heart couldn't help but race. The sea snake lady walked to the front of the Draconid youth, only an arm away from him, and stood still cheerfully. Magic and Qi are different. The Qi used by Qi practitioners all comes from themselves. Mages, on the other hand, are different. When mages cast spells, apart from consuming part of their own magic power, most of their magic power consumption comes from the outside world. The Draconid youth revealed a thoughtful expression. "You mean the casting materials?" The sea snake lady nodded and slowly took half a step forward, getting closer to the youth. "Casting materials bring us great convenience when casting spells. On one hand, these materials contain magic power. We use our mind to leverage this magic power for our own use, which can reduce our own magic power consumption. On the other hand, these casting materials themselves contain specific spell structures, which can greatly reduce the mental consumption and time of constructing spell models." Looking at the sea snake lady who was getting closer and closer, the Draconid youth frowned. "What you said are all orthodox spells. My spells come from my bloodline, so they're not the same." The sea snake lady shook her head and smiled. "In fact, the two are essentially the same. My lord, although your dragon breath is a talent spell, it still consumes magic power and requires spell models. It's just that this spell model is rooted in your bloodline, so you don't need to use your mind to construct it. But my lord, in your current situation, the last thing you should do is practice these talent spells." After saying this, the sea snake lady was already face to face with the Draconid youth. There was almost no distance between them. The Draconid youth was puzzled. "Why shouldn't I practice them?" The sea snake lady bit her lip and looked provocatively at the Draconid youth's face, chest, abdomen, and below. Her voice became low and gentle as she said, "Because your dragon bloodline is still unstable, my lord. Although the bloodline has been awakened, it's not dense enough. Under normal circumstances, my lord should maintain this state, but you can't. But you can't do it, my lord. You're still a human." "Of course, my lord, your human appearance is also very handsome. So, my lord, what you should do now is to take a specific potion to stabilize and even deepen your dragon bloodline. Of course, cultivating a certain Qi art can also help you achieve the same goal. My lord, please don't practice magic too much. This is because the casting of magic requires the consumption of magic power and the construction of spell models. My lord, you don't have magic power, nor do you use your mind to construct models, so what you consume is the foundation of your bloodline. If your bloodline is stable, my lord, you can cast it at will. But now that your bloodline is not stable, if you use it too frequently, your bloodline will degenerate, and worse, it might even disappear. I believe that, my lord, you definitely don't want to see this happen." After saying this, the sea snake lady was already close to the youth's body. Although the youth's chest was covered in dragon scales, he could still feel the astonishing size of the sea snake lady's chest and the soul-stirring softness. The youth stood straight and his breathing became heavy. The sea snake lady leaned against the youth's sturdy body and slowly stretched her head over. She whispered in the youth's ear, "My lord, the night is long. There are only the two of us on this small island. How should we get rid of the loneliness? What we should do now is not to practice magic, right?" The youth only felt a ball of fire rising in his lower abdomen, and his entire head buzzed, producing an illusion that was close to dizziness. His strong instincts made him raise his hand unconsciously. His hand had already turned into a hard dragon claw. His dragon claw stroked the sea snake lady's back and then slid down. The hard and terrifying dragon claw formed a sharp contrast with the female mage and pirate captain's graceful and flexible body. But in the next moment, the youth grabbed the sea snake lady's waist and pulled her away. "Thank you for your guidance, sea snake lady, but I want to be alone," the dragon person youth said coldly. The sea snake lady was stunned for a moment, then smiled. She bit her lips and stared at the youth, her gaze extremely seductive. "I understand. I will come find you again, my young and handsome lord." Her body slowly floated, then flew all the way to the snake lady on the distant sea, and finally disappeared. The youth exhaled a mouthful of turbid air. After the sea snake lady's interruption, he was no longer in the mood to train hard. He stopped activating the blood core and returned to his human form. His face, which was identical to Jinjin's, was filled with worry. The sea snake lady's reminder was very reasonable, but the youth's true situation was different from what she had imagined. Whether it was the Dragon Man transformation or the use of magic, it consumed the magic energy accumulated in the blood core. The youth stood on the pure white beach, bathed in the moonlight, and stared at his right hand. His right hand seemed to still have the sea snake lady's body temperature. That soft and smooth touch still rippled in the youth's heart. "This bloodline doesn't just give me strength." Previously, the youth had already felt it. Tonight's encounter made him feel it even more deeply. The Flame Dragon King's bloodline was affecting him. Dragons were lustful by nature. The youth discovered that it was increasingly difficult for him to resist the opposite sex, especially the opposite sex who was full of charm like the sea snake lady. Just now, he had a strong impulse in his heart, and his hand even uncontrollably touched the sea snake lady's waist. But in the end, his will as a knight defeated his instinctive impulse. Other than this, the youth also discovered that he was becoming more and more arrogant. He gradually developed a sense of contempt when looking at inferior life forms, and even when looking at humans. This sense of contempt seemed to be innate, just like how humans looked at pigs and dogs. The youth smiled bitterly and actually began to understand the Flame Dragon King. The Flame Dragon King's attitude was extremely arrogant, and it looked down on the youth, Zhonggu, and the others. It was only in the end, when the blood core displayed the power to kill it, that it had no choice but to change its attitude. "I'm a knight, not a dragon man." The youth raised his head and looked at the bright moon in the night sky, secretly warning himself. Chapter 228. New Moon Harbor was owned by New Moon Town. It faced the Flying Fish Strait and backed by the Honeymoon Forest. The Honeymoon Forest was the largest elven autonomous territory in the Qingming Empire. The Elven King had surrendered to the Qingming Emperor long ago. The Qingming Emperor divided them into marquises of the empire. The Honeymoon Forest was rich in resources, the most famous of which was the moon spring water. Drinking this spring water could quickly replenish the magic power in the body. Long-term drinking could also increase the upper limit of one's magic power storage. The elves living in the forest maintained large-scale trade with the Qingming Empire all year round. However, New Moon Town did not play the role of a trade hub, even though it was right next to this vast forest. The trade hub was Colored Mountain Town. This town was located on a high mountain, and the Empire had invested a lot of money to build it. The Honeymoon Forest was between its specific location and New Moon Town. Colored Mountain Town had a famous airport in the Empire. There were airships, hot air balloons, griffins, and space whales all year round. Especially in March and September every year, all kinds of flying mounts and tools hovered in the sky above Colored Mountain Town like a flock of birds. Compared to the more convenient and well-developed air routes, New Moon Town's sea routes were too weak. New Moon Town itself did not have any specialties, but its development also relied on the honeymoon forest. But unlike Colored Mountain Town, New Moon Town did not rely on trade, but on the annual beast tide in the honeymoon forest. The beast tide was a crisis but also an opportunity. The Mercenary Union and the Rogues Union built branches here. The Super Mercenary Corps also set up a station here. Hunting groups were frequent visitors here. Sometimes, mages and scholars could also be seen. The period before and after the beast tide was the busiest time in New Moon Town. The Mermaid Tavern was the largest and oldest tavern in New Moon Town. The reason why it was the largest and oldest was that it was the only tavern in the entire town. The tavern was noisy and brightly lit. The bartender was wiping glasses behind the bar counter. A male bard was singing on the stage. The rhythm of the song was bright and lively, brimming with a strong tropical flavor. At this moment, the door of the tavern was suddenly pushed open. The four of them rushed in looking travel-worn, attracting the attention of many people. The leader was a human man with a strong physique, dry yellow hair, and a strong bronze aura. Behind him was a gnome with a black cloth covering his face and carrying a long sword on his back. Behind him was an old man. His face was full of wrinkles, his body was fat, and he wore a pair of huge glasses. His black and white beard was well groomed. The last one was a young man with an ordinary appearance. He seemed a little nervous. The four of them walked past the tables and arrived at the bar counter. The one who spoke was the old man in the middle. His voice was hoarse as he complained, "This damned mountain path." Then, he sat down on a high wooden chair, knocked on the bar table, and asked, "What good wine do you have here?" The bartender put down the glass that he was wiping and said, "Sir, our specialty here is the bronze cider." The wine was made from a bronze apple tree in the city at the very heart of the honeymoon forest. Do you know about copper apples, iron apples, silver apples, and even golden apples? The old man raised his eyebrows slightly, revealing a trace of surprise. These apples were not ordinary. They were demonic plants and contained a mysterious demonic power. Long-term consumption could allow superhumans of the corresponding level to increase their foundation and allow their strength to increase rapidly. More importantly, when a superhuman was at the peak of life but was temporarily stuck in a bottleneck and could not break through, then this superhuman could choose to eat higher-level apples to help him break through smoothly. These magic apples were the most precious foreign trade goods in the honeymoon forest. As for the moon spring water, it was a sacred item of the elves and was never sold publicly. The old man smiled and said, "Then give me a glass of bronze cider. Everyone else, have some beer." 1 glass of bronze cider is a gold coin. The other beers are 18 copper coins in total. The bartender smiled. He sensed the life aura of an ordinary person from the old man and advised, "Old man, you should try not to drink too much." The old man directly took out 2 gold coins from his pocket and placed them on the bar counter. He pressed the surface of the gold coins with 2 fingers and slowly pushed them to the bartender. "Tell me something new." Thus, the bartender understood that the extra money was the old man's fee for information. "If you want to know about the beast tide, then I have to tell you that you're early." "No, no, no." The old man shook his head. "Tell me about the ship." He lowered his voice slightly and added, "The ships I'm talking about are not merchant ships or warships." The bartender's eyes flashed and he also lowered his voice. "Then you came at the right time. There will be a good opportunity in the next few days. At least 2 ships will dock at the dock to resupply. But I don't know if these 2 ships will accept people." "2 ships? What are they like?" the old man asked. "They're in cahoot. I don't know the details, but they're very strong. The captains of the two ships are silver-level experts, and it's said that there are more than 2 silver-level superhumans in this pirate gang. The old man was puzzled. Who exactly are they? 2 captains? Is it a small alliance? The bartender shook his head. I'm not sure about that. The old man took out another gold coin. But the bartender refused. This made the old man understand that it wasn't that the bartender didn't want to take the money, but that was all he knew. But the old man still pushed the gold coin to the bartender. I want to board the ship. Is there any way? The bartender sighed and shook his head. There's no way. This is the first time they've docked. But I think you have a good chance. This group of people has been through a big battle. Although they were defeated, their opponent was a gold fighter. It's said that they lost a ship, so you can imagine the loss of people. The old man glanced at his 3 companions and immediately understood. The pirate gang the bartender was referring to was the fleet of the young knight, Zhong-gu, and Ash. The old man was none other than Sang-Soo. The other 3 were Lan Zhao, San-Dao, and Bai. Although the young knight had captured 006, he had also reached a preliminary cooperation with the Empire and obtained a magic contract. But this time, they were going to the Empire's harbor to resupply. Of course, the young knight wouldn't go there directly. What if the truth of the island was exposed? What if the Empire wanted to lure and kill the pirates? Therefore, the young knight ordered Sang-Soo and the others to go ashore first and check out the situation. He himself led the fleet and took the initiative to dock at the nameless island to resupply, buying time for Sang-Soo and the others to investigate. Sang-Soo and the others arrived at New Moon Harbor on the deep-sea monster fish first. They used some means to change their appearance slightly and came to the Mermaid Tavern to inquire about the news. There was a saying in the Empire that said, "Wine can't invent anything, but wine can reveal secrets." Therefore, taverns had always been the best place to inquire about information. After learning that his gang was coming to resupply, Sang-Soo's worry disappeared by more than half. The news had been spread, and the probability of the Empire setting a trap to lure and kill them immediately became much smaller. Because compared to luring and killing a few silver-level pirates, the Empire's reputation was more important. From the information he got from 006, Sang-Soo was very clear. The Sacred Empire had a big plan for the pirate deity throne. Therefore, the Empire would not give up such a big plan for a few silver-level pirates. As for why the news spread, it was actually very simple. If the Empire wanted to provide supplies, it would definitely involve the mobilization of personnel and materials. And some of the supplies that the young knight had asked for included especially huge objects. These things could not be hidden. As long as there were people involved, the relevant information would naturally be spread. Of course, it was far from enough to just inquire about information. In the next plan, Sang-Soo and the others still had to go to the harbor at night. But it was not yet late at night. Sang-Soo and the others still stayed in the tavern, inquiring about other information while waiting for the right time. The tavern's business was very good, and customers kept coming in. The Mermaid Tavern was not big. Soon, it became even noisier and more crowded. Sang-Soo and the others had already left the bar and were sitting at a table in the corner. A tall and thin man with black hair bumped into Sang-Soo. "Sorry." He raised his hand and motioned, then turned and left. However, San-Dao suddenly reached out and grabbed him. With a fierce strike, he knocked him to the ground. The man clutched his stomach and groaned in pain. San-Dao slowly took out the money pouch from the man's chest and put it on Sang-Soo's table. Seeing his own money pouch, Sang-Soo was shocked. "Thief!" Baiya shouted. "Let me!" Lan Zhao stood up, grabbed the man's collar, and dragged him to the door of the tavern. Then, he pushed the door open and threw the thief out. Because of this, the noise in the tavern quieted down a bit, but soon returned to normal. Sang-Soo listened quietly in the corner. The words of these customers often revealed a lot of information. As he had wished, he had heard the information about his party. After the mysterious disappearance of the Pig's Kiss, the Holy Knights, the Holy Church, and the 100 Needles clan all sent people to search for a while. After the search was fruitless, the search and rescue team withdrew. The wanted list of Jean, Scab, and the others had been posted in the coastal cities. There were portraits of them on the list, and at the same time, there was a generous reward. Sang-Soo was not worried. This situation had long been within his expectations. At the same time, although Jean and Scab had been in contact with Gray and the others for a long time, but their appearance had been changed to a certain extent, and there was not much difference between their original appearance. The most important thing was the young knight's White River Chi. This kind of chi was very common, and it was not the 100 Needles chi. Therefore, it was difficult for people to associate the two together. "What a wonderful story!" Baya suddenly exclaimed. Sang-Soo was stunned. Baya pointed at the bard on the stage. "Don't you think the story he recited is wonderful?" Sang-Soo was stunned. His attention had been focused on the conversation of the other customers, and he had neglected the music that had always been there. On the stage, the minstrel played the lyre, and another man played the flute. The poem he recited was in the format of a typical heroic epic. It told the story of a few warriors who found the cultists and brought them to justice to protect the townspeople. Sang-Soo did not care at first, but at the end of the poem, the bard revealed the names of these warriors in a praising tone. They were the town's mayor, the captain of the guard team, the church's pastor, and even the owner of the Mermaid Tavern. "So this is something that really happened," Baiyu exclaimed. The surrounding customers were not surprised. They had heard this song many times and were already used to it. Sang-Soo quickly lowered his head to hide his emotions. He heard more information about the cultists, and the end of the song revealed their evil faith. The Blue Charm God. Chapter 229. Blue Charm God. The sea god that the merfolk believed in. The fairy tale of the merfolk was her divine weapon. However, everyone knew that her believers were not just the merfolk. Faith would spread. Any aquatic tribe was likely to believe in the Blue Charm God. Before the Blue Charm God ascended to the throne, her original form was a merfolk. Therefore, most of the merfolk tribe believed in her. Similarly, it was not strange for humans to believe in this god. Especially in the coastal areas, her faith was easier to spread. For a long time, the Sacred Empire did not have an orthodox sea god, and the Blue Charm God was the orthodox sea god. Believing in her was very beneficial to the believers. It could make navigation smoother and allow them to catch more fish. Sometimes, fishing at sea could bring out large shells with pearls or other rare fish. The key was that she was a god of a foreign tribe. The Sacred Empire had always been strict with such gods. Because faith was very important, such a unique resource had always been fiercely contested between the gods. Faith was a very powerful force. It involved the secular world. The donations of believers brought about a huge amount of wealth, and sects could be armed separately. It also involved the humanities. The mutual understanding between believers must be far beyond that of ordinary people. The same faith meant the same values. Especially positive faith, it could greatly promote cooperation between humans. Finally, it involved the gods. Gods were the oldest existences in the world and often the most powerful combat force. The secrets of the gods were not well known, but in general, there was a rule. The more believers a god had, the stronger that god would be. Therefore, anyone who believed in a god like the Blue Charm God would be classified as a heretic. Heretics often ended up very miserably. From the Empire's point of view, they had to be killed as a warning to the others. What an unexpected gain! Sang-Soo was moved. He did not expect to find clues about the Blue Charm God by asking around in the tavern. They were now in a very difficult situation. Part of the difficulty was related to the fairy tale of the merfolk. This divine weapon could produce pearl foam. Everyone used this pearl foam to hide themselves. However, the efficiency of the divine weapon's production was getting lower and lower. In the near future, everyone would not have any pearl foam to use. By then, it would be difficult for them to resist spells, prophecies, and detection methods in divine spells. They would quickly expose themselves. If they were caught by the Empire, they would be finished. If we find such cultists, we can find ways to increase the production of divine artifacts through them, or ways to make more efficient use of pearl bubbles. This will be of great help to us. Sang Soo calculated in his heart. ZD was still in a trance, so it was difficult for them to contact the leader of the 100 Needles clan. It would be hard to atone for his sins in a short period of time. Under such circumstances, the longer they dragged it out, the greater their chances of being saved. This cultist was unfortunately captured. It could be due to his carelessness or his lack of strength. At the end of the poem, he was publicly executed. Even so, this was still a valuable clue. Perhaps I can discover more things. Perhaps he's not the only cultist hiding here who shares the same belief. So late at night, when the four of them left the tavern to begin their operation, Sang Soo said, "Let's split up. Lan Zhao, Sandow, you guys go and explore the harbor. Make sure it's safe. Bai Yu and I will go and check out the cultists' residence." Lan Zhao nodded in agreement. The fairy tale about the blue charm god and the mermaid was indeed a clue worth exploring. Bai Yu wanted to say something, but stopped. He didn't want to be alone with Sang Soo. The young man was now faintly afraid of the old scholar. But Lan Zhao and Sandow left directly. "Let's go," Sang Soo urged. Bai Yu gritted her teeth and braced herself to follow the old scholar. The cultist's residence was by the sea. It was a small, crudely built dock. The dilapidated wooden stairs and the disrepair roof leaked wind. It was extremely miserable. The old scholar arranged for Bai Yu to guard the door, and he opened the door alone to explore. The small dock was as poor as a church mouse, and it was obvious at a glance. After the incident with the cultist, this place had been visited many times by others. "Wait a minute." The old scholar looked around and suddenly paused. His eyes stopped at his feet. The floorboard seemed to be a bit too loose. The old scholar bent down and groped for a moment under the clear moonlight. Soon, he lifted the floorboard. It turned out that this was a specially made floorboard that could be moved. But Sang Soo was soon disappointed. Below the floorboard was calm seawater, and there was nothing else. But just as he was about to close the floorboard, he inadvertently caught a glimpse of a symbol. The symbol was engraved on the bottom of the floorboard. It seemed to have been carved with a knife. The symbol was very clear. It was like a U with a straight vertical line in the middle. The vertical line went through the bottom of the U and extended out. At first glance, it looked like the simple drawing of a fork. At this moment, Sang Soo's pupils shrank. He was shocked because he was one of the few people in the world who knew the special meaning of this symbol. "Don't move." At this moment, a bright dagger suddenly crossed Sang Soo's neck. A black figure gradually appeared behind Sang Soo. It was a thief. "I have him under control," the thief shouted. Obviously, he had an accomplice. The next moment, the door was kicked open. Another thief escorted Bai Yu into the room. Although Bai Yu was restrained, he struggled hard and did not give in. The thief who escorted him snorted and immediately used his qi. The qi rushed into Bai Yu's body. Suddenly, Bai Yu screamed and lost all his strength. He almost fell to the ground. "Be sensible, you brat. If you continue to cause trouble, I'll kill you." The thief behind him threatened. "It's you." Under the moonlight, Sang Soo saw the thief behind Bai Yu. Wasn't he the thief who successfully stole his purse in the tavern? As it turned out, although this thief failed and was thrown out of the tavern, he did not give up. He was a member of the Thief Guild. He found a helper and kept an eye on Sang-Soo's group of 4. They were only 2 bronze-rank thieves. Originally, they did not have much of a chance, but the benefits of following them quickly showed. Sang-Soo's group of 4 split up. The strongest, Sandao and Lan Zhao, left, while the weakest, Sang-Soo and Bai Ye, took another route. This strategy of splitting up their forces was extremely stupid in the eyes of the 2 thieves, but at the same time, it made them very happy. They secretly followed and saw Sang-Soo enter the small dock. There was no one else around, so they immediately took action. I said before, opportunity always favors those who do not give up. The thief suppressed Bai Ye and looked at Sang-Soo proudly. Sang-Soo shook his head and sighed. "Don't hurt us. What do you want? I can give you money." The thief in front of the old scholar suddenly laughed. "See, I said this is a fat sheep." In the next moment, Sang-Soo heard the thief behind him reply, "Those who can afford to drink the bronze cider are naturally fat sheep." Speaking of which, Sang-Soo changed the topic. "You kidnapped us, aren't you afraid that our people will find trouble with you? Do you know who we are?" The thief who detained Bai Ye laughed. "Of course you are not a mercenary group. But that goblin, I'm afraid he was a mercenary. People are different. Even if you mix together, in my eyes you have a clear background. If I'm not wrong, your backer should be a noble, right? You are a lackey of a noble. As for this young man, he is just a newcomer. He is too inexperienced." Sang-Soo nodded. "You guessed correctly." The thief was even more proud. He continued, "I have been in New Moon Town for many years. In the last 2 or 3 years, New Moon Harbor has gradually changed. On the surface, it looks like nothing, but in fact, I know that there are forces that have secretly stretched their tentacles here. The noble behind you should want to smuggle, right? So, they value this place and want to seek huge profits through the sea route. So, you built the harbor and secretly sent people to mix among the pirates and establish a network. No, the force behind you is not necessarily human. Haha, it could also be an elf from the honeymoon forest. I have long heard rumors that the honeymoon elf king has always wanted to return to the elven sanctuary. Although the trade with the empire is getting bigger and bigger, the status of the honeymoon forest is declining year by year. Sang-Soo laughed involuntarily. The thief in front of him was quite imaginative. The thief knew that Sang-Soo and his group wanted to mix among the pirates, which was not surprising. Sang-Soo asked the bartender for information about others, and the bartender would also sell his information to others. This was the business of information. The thief's vision was very accurate. To a certain extent, he saw through the background of Sang-Soo, Bai Ye, Sandao, and the others. But he did not know that it was actually the Empire's navy that secretly invested in the construction of New Moon Harbor. The Empire wanted to build this place into a qualified secret supply port to facilitate the execution of spy missions. The thief said that New Moon Harbor has gradually changed in the last 2 or 3 years. This showed that the Empire's plan to promote the construction of the secret port had already started 2 or 3 years ago. The competition for the pirate throne had started this year, but the Empire's wise men had long heard or predicted that this would happen and had made plans in advance. The reason why the Sacred Empire was the world's #1 force was not only its strong muscles, but also its clever mind and far-sighted vision. Although the thief's speculation was wrong, it was logically self-consistent. It was a pity that he was at the bottom. If his position was higher and he received more secret information, he should be able to guess the correct answer. How many gold coins do you want? I will cooperate with you. I hope you can release me as soon as possible because I have an important mission. Sang-Soo sighed. Compared to the loss of this money, the consequences of delaying the mission given by the higher-ups are more serious. In addition, I have to warn the 2 of you that after you get the ransom, please leave this town as soon as possible and try not to come back. Because once I regain my freedom, I will definitely use manpower and material resources to arrest the 2 of you. Of course, I don't really want to harm the two of you, but my identity has determined that I can't disgrace the nobles behind me. Please cooperate with me and don't make it too difficult for me." "Ah," the thief sneered. "I know, it's the honor of the nobles. Tell me, how much ransom do you want? Do you know how to write?" "I can write a blackmail letter for you," Sang-Soo said. The two thieves looked at each other. They did not expect Sang-Soo to be so reasonable. One of them asked tentatively, "Then 100 gold coins?" "Okay." Sang-Soo immediately nodded and agreed. Seeing him so straightforward, the two thieves immediately changed their mind. "No, 200 gold coins." Sang-Soo nodded. 300 gold coins, no, 500 gold coins. The thief changed his mind again. Sang-Soo shook his head. 500 gold coins is too little. How about 1,000 gold coins? The eyes of the two thieves flashed with light. "But the problem is, can you afford 1,000 gold coins?" Sang-Soo laughed. The two thieves' faces changed color. The ridicule in Sang-Soo's laughter was too strong. "Old thing, I'll let you suffer." The thief who detained Sang-Soo moved his dagger. In the next moment, the dagger pierced Sang-Soo's cheek, leaving a long wound on his face. But no blood flowed out of the wound. Not only that, from the cut, Sang-Soo's skin and flesh were deathly pale, without any signs of life. "What are you?" The two thieves were terrified. Sang-Soo smiled and reached out his hand to touch his cheek. He touched the wound and pressed it with his finger, pressing the cut skin back to its original position. Then, the other three saw the wound on Sang-Soo's face quickly heal. The two thieves realized that something was wrong and wanted to retreat, to put some distance between them and Sang-Soo. But at this time they realized that they could not move. An indescribable coldness froze their souls. You! Spare me, spare me!" The two's faces twisted as they begged for mercy. Sang-Soo began to chant. After a dozen breaths, his spell was cast. The two thieves' souls were forcibly extracted, and their bodies fell to the ground. "You're a necromancer!" The two thieves' souls screamed in unison. Chapter 230. In the dark and dilapidated dock, the moonlight shone in through the gaps. The skinny old scholar's eyes were as cold as frost at this moment. The souls of the two thieves kept begging for mercy in front of him. Baya was no longer shackled and regained his freedom. He fell to the ground. He would probably never forget that feeling for the rest of his life. The thief's soul flew past his ear and brushed past half of his body, giving him a chilling sensation. "I beg you, please spare us. Don't kill me, don't kill me. I have money, I'll give you all my savings." The souls kept rolling and wailing. The situation suddenly turned around. Necromancers. Corrupt darkness, mysterious death, cold, cruel, playing with the dead, manipulating souls. Necromancers had never been tolerated by the orthodox and were hated by everyone. In the Qingming Empire, the hunting of necromancers was even more intense. As long as they were found, they would be hunted and killed vigorously. They had never been tolerated. Baya was so cold that his teeth chattered uncontrollably. He had heard a lot of horror stories since he was a child, and the protagonists of these stories were often necromancers. Even though he already knew Sang-Soo's identity before this. But at this moment, the strange and terrifying scene of Sang-Soo interrogating souls still aroused endless fear in Baya's heart. Sang-Soo asked about the evil cult. Thieves had always been well informed. A thief's soul said in a hurried tone, "The mayor led a large number of people and horses to surround this small dock. After the city defense army broke in, they saw the evil cult member turning over the floorboards, trying to escape into the water. In the end, the priest and the commander of the city defense army attacked together and subdued him." Another thief's soul immediately added, "After the evil cult member was arrested, the mayor and the others discussed and hanged him in public in the afternoon a week later. The mayor, the priest, and the commander of the city defense army publicized this matter greatly for political achievements and glory. They even hired bards to compose a song. Every night in the Mermaid's Tavern, they would sing it at least once. In fact, the actual arrest process was very smooth. It was not as complicated as the song. Sang-soo narrowed his eyes. He felt that something was amiss. The symbol under the floorboard was clearly carved there on purpose. How could someone with this symbol be caught just like that? "Where's his corpse?" Sang-soo asked. "He was hanged and then hung from the noose for a week. In the end, he was buried in a mass grave in the back mountain of the town." The thief's soul knew everything. Sang-soo fell into silence. His gaze once again shifted to the wooden floor that could be lifted. He now felt that this wooden board was very strange. If this evil cult member was the identity Sang-soo had in mind, he would not have been captured and hanged like this. There was also this wooden floor, which was completely unnecessary. No, this might be a disguise. Sang-soo's heart suddenly shook. A flash of inspiration appeared in his mind, giving him a new perspective. How was the cultist's identity exposed? Sang-soo asked again. This time, the two thief souls shook their heads. They only knew that it was a rumor. The priest of the church first received the tip-off and found that the cultist's behavior was very strange. Then, the priest found the mayor, who sent the city guards to investigate and confirmed the cultist's evil belief. Sang-soo nodded and opened his mouth to chant again. The two thief souls were suddenly in great pain. They screamed and rolled wildly in the air. After a dozen breaths, one of their souls suddenly exploded, while the other stabilized. The originally translucent human form turned dark blue. The original human face was still relatively clear, but after the transformation, his face became very blurry. Only a mouth and two eye sockets were left. The rest of his nose and ears were all gone. Necromancy spell, ghost creation. This spell used the souls of living beings as materials to create ghosts. Obviously, this spell had a certain success rate. Just like now, only one of the two souls had turned into a ghost. After the thief's ghost was transformed, he lost many things, not just his human appearance. He no longer begged for mercy. Instead, he quietly floated in the air, waiting for his master, Sang-soo's next instructions. "Float down and check the situation at the bottom of the sea nearby." Sang-soo gave the order. The ghost leisurely floated and directly penetrated the wooden floor of the dock, quickly merging into the sea. "Young man, I hope you can keep watch for me again. Is that okay?" Sang-soo smiled at Baya. Baya was stunned for a moment. He quickly nodded and hurriedly ran out to guard the door. Sang-soo chanted again and at the same time took out a pitch-black bone. After the chant ended, the pitch-black bone turned into smoke and completely dissipated. With the help of the casting material, Sang-soo successfully cast another necromancy spell, Ghost Eye. When he opened his eyes were already pitch black. The situation at the bottom of the sea appeared directly in his mind. He used his mind to control the ghost while carefully searching the bottom of the sea. He found something. Not long after, he found that there was a magic circle hidden in the bottom of the sea. The magic circle covered the entrance, because at the bottom of the sea, the entrance was like a circular valve. It is very likely that there is an underground research lab under the valve. Sang-soo estimated in his mind. Then, he controlled the ghost and carefully probed. The magic circle only had the function of camouflage and isolation. There was no counterattack or any trap. Because of the magic protection, the thief's ghost could not use its advantage and directly penetrate it. Sang-soo did not rashly try. He thought for a moment and temporarily gave up on the idea of breaking through the magic circle and valve. Baya circled around the small dock and patrolled the beach. The beach under the moonlight was originally beautiful, but the young man had just witnessed the necromancer killing two thieves and extracting their souls to create a ghost. Baiyu was not in the mood to enjoy the beautiful scenery at all. He looked up at the moon and felt lost. I want to be a knight. Why am I here? Am I an accomplice of the necromancer? In those stories and poems, I'm the villain. Baiyu was distressed. He wanted to be a knight, not an evil necromancer's evil follower. Creak. With a creak, Sang-Soo opened the door and walked out of the small dock. Baiyu hurriedly went up to greet him, but soon, his footsteps paused. The thief's ghost was floating behind Sang-Soo. Let's go, Sang-Soo said indifferently. Baiyu obediently followed, but subconsciously kept a distance from Sang-Soo. The young man originally thought that they were going to meet up with San Dao and Lan Zhao, but the path was obviously wrong. Where are we going? Baiyu asked worriedly. Hee, to a more important place to verify a guess of mine. Sang-Soo smiled. If one did not note Sang-Soo's identity as a necromancer, then this smile would be very natural. However, at this moment, Baiyu felt that Sang-Soo's smile was filled with an ice-cold chill that was extremely horrifying. The young man's feelings towards Sang-Soo were very complicated. On the one hand, he had saved Sang-Soo's life. If not for Baiyu's help, Sang-Soo would have been eaten by the green iguana. On the other hand, after Baiyu fell into a coma, Sang-Soo advocated eating Baiyu's flesh. When Baiyu found out about this, besides understanding, he naturally loathed Sang-Soo. On the other hand, Sang-Soo had taught Baiyu many times, and his knowledge made the young man admire him from the bottom of his heart. In the end, Sang-Soo finally revealed his identity as a necromancer on Maze Island, and Baiyu became more fearful of him. With the ghost leading the way, the two quickly arrived at the mass grave in the back of the mountain. Looking at the toppled tombstones, the withered grass, and the night wind blowing, Baiyu's expression was calm. He was not worried that some ghost would come looking for trouble with him. I have a necromancer by my side. At this moment, Baiyu felt a subtle sense of security because of Sang-Soo. The ghost drifted for a long time before stopping at a place. He pointed his finger below where he was flying and whimpered. Sang-Soo turned to look at Baiyu. Young man, there's something I need your help with. Very quickly, Baiyu found a piece of withered wood and split it apart to form a simple wooden shovel. The young man held the shovel and began to dig. What am I doing? I'm actually digging up a corpse. How did it become like this? I want to be a knight, not an accomplice of a necromancer. The soil was gradually turned over, and Baiyu was suddenly shocked, almost falling to the ground again. He found a corpse buried in the soil. Well done, young man, take him out in one piece. Don't be too rough, Sang-Soo said. Baiyu held his breath. The corpse was too smelly, the whole flesh was in a half-rotten state, bones were rotten in some places, and flesh was still in some places, with white maggots wriggling inside. Baiyu resisted the fear and disgust, and used all his strength to dig up the corpse. Sang-Soo squatted down, without any expression of disgust, and turned over the male corpse. His movements were very skillful, but what made Baiyu even more afraid was Sang-Soo's attitude. His attitude towards the male corpse was no different from how he treated the corpses of wild beasts. When Baiyu was on the Island of Confusion, he had seen Sang-Soo dissect the bodies of man-made magical beasts more than once. Under his calm gaze, there was a hidden curiosity, as well as the wonderful pleasure of satisfying his curiosity through practical exploration. Young man, do you know? Although people are dead, in many cases, corpses can tell us a lot of secret. Sang-Soo was indeed very happy. Baiyu was puzzled. Sir, why don't you just use the spell just now? We only need to summon the soul of this dead man, and we can ask everything. Sang-Soo shook his head. After a person dies, the existence of the soul is limited. This is not only the shackles of resurrection divine spells, but also the spells of the undead. He has been dead for a long time, and his soul has dissipated. But it is precisely because of this that it can explain some problems. What problems? The dead man is not the real cultist. What? He found an unlucky guy who died for him. As Tsang Su spoke, he stood up straight, stretched out his foot, and lightly hooked the dead man's body, turning it over so that it was facing the sky and facing the ground. Then, Tsang Su took out a medicine bag from his pocket and sprinkled powder. He chanted, and his spirit stirred the magic power contained in the powder, the air faintly fluctuating. When the powder fell on the body, it quickly set off star-like illusions. The illusions kept changing, like blue waves of the sea, and also like fish scales, flashing by in a trance. These should be the divine spells of the blue charm god. Tsang Su smiled. Please bury him again. Huh? You still want to bury him? The dead should be respected. Let him rest in peace. Tsang Su sighed. You couldn't help but mutter inwardly, it's clearly because of you that we're here to dig up the body. Fortunately, after burying the body, Tsang Su led Bai back to town. The two of them successfully met up with Lan Zhao and San Dao. We've checked. There's no problem at the docks. We've found a lot of resources, including the things we proposed. The Empire is sincere. This is not a trap, San Dao said. Tsang Su nodded. I've also found a lot on my side. If the truth is as I guessed, we might be able to solve the problem of the fairy tale of the mermaid. Chapter 231. The sky was as blue as the sea breeze blew gently, and the sun shone on the surface of the sea, making it sparkle. The Golden Chin and the Snake Lady were docked at the dock, and the young knight led everyone down the wooden stairs. There was already a receptionist waiting at the dock, and he immediately came up to greet them. Captain of the Dragon Suit, heroes of the sea, this way please. The receptionist bowed slightly. His attitude was neither servile nor overbearing. Since New Moon Town was chosen as the port for the secret mission, the dock had long been controlled by the Empire. At the moment, other than the Empire's personnel, there were only the young knight and the others at the dock. The young knight walked in front, followed by Zhonggu and 006, who were disguised as Lion Flag, followed by the Grey, Golden Chin, and Sea Snake Lady. The latter three scanned their surroundings with vigilance. Although they had accepted the Empire's secret mission, it was their first time coming to the Empire's secret port. Naturally, they were a little nervous. After all, they could still sail freely at sea, but if they landed at the port it would be easy for an ambush to succeed. Compared to them, the young knight's gaze was calm, and Zhonggu looked around with a bold demeanor. The receptionist accompanied the young knight, his eyes like torches, taking in everyone's expressions. It seems that the information from the dragon suit is true. He should be an Empire's knight. He and his companions have a natural sense of trust towards the Empire. As for the other three, they are indeed pirates used to the wild on the sea. The receptionist led them to the dock. This dock was not comparable to the small one Tsang Su used to investigate the cultists. It was huge, and not only did it have all the necessary facilities, it also included alchemy tools. This meant that the people who built the ships were at least black iron extraordinaires, because normal people could not control alchemy items. If this dock was built at full capacity, there would be at least 2 black iron magic ships launched every year. In a year and a half, a bronze magic ship could be built. If it was a normal warship, there would be even more. Of course, the dock at New Moon Harbor is not responsible for building ships, it is mainly responsible for repairing and improving the performance of the ships. There are more than 30 docks like New Moon Harbor, and they are scattered across the Xingming continent and the islands at sea. There will be more in the future. The receptionist's tone was filled with pride. He himself was a bronze-ranked fighter, and his words revealed the strength of the Empire. The dock wasn't empty. There was a ship docked inside. It was a 3-masted ship with a wide hull, with a forecastle and a poop that extended out from both ends of the ship. The ship was 80 meters long, 36 meters wide, and 15 meters high. There were a total of 3 decks, 24 cannon muzzles, and about 500 sailors. Of course, this was not the data of a full load, but it took into account the consumption of food, the journey of the voyage, and other factors. This ship was even bigger than the Pig's Kiss. The Pig's Kiss was 76 meters long. It was a commercial ship that could sail across the ocean. Before it could travel between the 2 continents, it was already close to the top. In fact, the 2 could not be simply compared. That was because the Pig's Kiss was a commercial ship, and this large sailboat was a warship. With just 1 round of bombardment, there was a possibility that the Pig Kiss would be sunk. On the Lost Island, the escape boats that they had created were even more incomparable. The young knight and the others were not surprised to see this ship. In fact, this was one of the purposes of his trip. They had defeated most of the ships of the Flesh Pirates, which was a very good result. Although they were defeated in the confrontation with the Flesh Pirates, the young knights group had already shown their potential and value. The Empire decided to increase its support, and this ship was a proof of the Empire's sincerity. It was also a request made by the young knight. He needed a ship as his own ship. He had the deep-sea monster fish, but this ship originated from the war traffickers, so it was better not to expose it. On the one hand, it could reduce the possibility of leakage, and on the other hand, it could be used as a secret weapon, a hidden card. As a leader, the young knight certainly hoped that he would have as many hidden cards as possible. So until now, Grey, Golden Chin, Sea Snake, and the others did not know about the existence of the monster fish. Let's see the ship first, the young knight suggested. The receptionist suddenly smiled. This way, please. He led everyone to the ship for a tour. The warship was well equipped. There was a measurement room with nautical charts and nautical sextant, a crew cabin with single and double beds, a kitchen for cooking, and a spacious dining room next to the kitchen. Because it was a warship, there were few warehouses, but the ammunition and food storage were large. There was an infirmary and a carpentry maintenance room. There was a kinetic energy cabin with a magic energy furnace. This was the heart of the warship. This meant that even if there was no wind, the warship could still use magic energy to move forward quickly. In addition, there was an alchemy room, a meditation room, a combat training room, and even a prayer room. Generally speaking, there was no prayer room on a pirate ship. Only on a national warship would there be one, because it was prepared for priests and priests. The captain's room was at the stern, with the best line of sight and the widest space. The wide reddish-brown rudder, the mast that still emitted the smell of paint, and the pure white sail all showed that this new ship had just been launched and was in its peak state. The entire ship was made of high-quality oak, but there was a layer of metallic luster on the surface of the hull. This was a metal coating, an alchemy technology that had only appeared in the past 100 years. It could greatly increase the toughness of the target. This was not the technology of the war traffickers, who were better at life alchemy and making munitions. The concept of alchemy was actually very broad, and there were many fields of study. The war trafficker was indeed an alchemist grandmaster, but he was not the only one. In the end, everyone visited the cannon positions. The pull cables of the cannons were all made of fine iron, but there was nothing above the cannons. The tour was over. Zhonggu was secretly happy. Although he was good at land warfare, he had a good eye and could see the quality of this warship. His face was gloomy, and the brand-new warship in front of him reminded him of his own gray rat. The young knight was both satisfied and dissatisfied. He was satisfied that this warship was better than the one he had requested. It was a black iron magic ship. He was dissatisfied that this warship was not complete. The most obvious thing was that it was not equipped with a single cannon. Even the sails were only a set of sails on the main mast. In addition, he needed to replenish food, water, wine, sleeping bags for ordinary sailors, and so on. After leaving the warship, everyone returned to the dock. The receptionist prepared tea and breakfast in the workshop, and while serving everyone, He handed the magic contract to the young knight. This was the young man's first replenishment, and it was of great significance. The content of the magic contract was a contract, which stipulated the cooperation between the two parties, as well as the obligations between each other, and the consequences of breach. After the young man checked it, he handed the contract to others. After reading it, the young man nodded to the receptionist and said, "There is no problem with the contract. Captain of the Dragon Suit, heroes, please wait a moment before signing this contract. I need to verify the situation with the relevant personnel." The receptionist smiled gently. The young captain nodded, and 006 was able to communicate with the receptionist. The receptionist had to confirm the state of 006, whether he was being held hostage or threatened, and whether there were any secrets that were inconvenient to report before. The young man was not worried about this. 006 did not know about the existence of deep-sea monster fish, and Sang Su and the others. After the experience of the Island of Confusion, the young man acted more steadily and cautiously. Before, whether it was the confrontation with Gold Chin, the sea snake woman, or the battle with the hidden meat, he had always hidden the deep-sea monster fish. Sure enough, under the magic instrument, the receptionist confirmed that 006 had a perfect and free will. "I'm sorry to have kept you waiting." In fact, they didn't wait long, but the receptionist's attitude was really good. "There's one last thing to confirm. It's about the divinity phalanx in the intelligence. Can I identify it myself?" The young man nodded, turned his head slightly, and gestured with his eyes. He loosened the collar of his clothes, took out the necklace, took it off in public, and put it in the hands of the receptionist. The receptionist was well prepared, or rather, the Empire was well prepared. He took out the appraisal scroll, and soon the scroll flashed with a platinum-like brilliance. This appraisal scroll was of high specification and value, and it was successfully appraised in one go. But the receptionist didn't stop, and then used another appraisal scroll of the same specification to confirm the previous appraisal result. The receptionist held the white phalanx in his hand and praised, "To some extent, it's already a semi-divine artifact. The phalanx of the 4th generation Pirate King, I have to say your luck is really good. It'll be of great use." The young knight made an "oh" sound and asked deliberately, "Can you tell me more about it?" "Of course." The receptionist nodded. "So far, there have been 6 generations of Pirate Kings. The first 3 generations were barbarians, which was the era of pirate. Their existence gave all the nobles a headache, even a chill. Now, scholars call it the era of barbarian dragons. The era of barbarian dragons ended because the treaty between the barbarians and the dragons broke, and pirate activities were suppressed by the nobles of all the continents. It wasn't until a few hundred years later that the pirate throne was reborn. The 4th generation Pirate King was born, but he wasn't a barbarian, but a goblin thief. He relied on his innate talent for treachery, as well as just the right amount of luck, to occupy the pirate throne in advance. But his actual strength was very low, only at the gold level. So, after that, he was plotted against by other existences and lost his life. However, how could a goblin who could steal the pirate throne be ordinary? He was definitely not an ordinary gold thief. He had divinity himself. His bloodline was very high-end, it was the bloodline of a god. In the process of his growth, he gradually condensed the divinity of greed. Any action that satisfied his greed would increase this divinity, and the growth of his divinity would make him even more greedy. The reason why he could take such a huge risk and occupy the pirate throne was because he was insatiable. After he died, his divinity of greed settled in the bones of his entire body. As spoils of war, his bones were separated in the years that followed and wandered to every corner of the world. Under normal circumstances, as long as an intelligent life obtains these bone fragments, the divinity of greed inside will take effect. These bone fragments will point to the location of the thing that the user wants the most in his heart. No wonder his name, which was covered in dust, could break through to the first place on the holy monument. Of course, he's no longer one now. Chapter 232. In fact, the bone of greed had long been taken away by the young knight. However, when he came to New Moon Harbor, the young knight returned the small bone to Ashes in advance. This was to hide the existence of the pearl foam. According to the rules of the holy monument and the pirate's divinity, if the young knight snatched the bone from Ashes, then this action was in line with the pirate's looting behavior, and the young knight's name would be on the holy monument. However, only Ash's name remained on the holy monument. In this regard, the young knight's explanation to 006 and the Empire was that although he defeated Ashes, he did not steal his treasures. Instead, he wanted to take this orc as his subordinate. The Empire was deceived and did not discover the truth for the time being. The young knight also used this to hide the green jade golden coffin. At present, only Ashes knew this secret. The one with a body full of dust has been pushed down from the ranking? Who did it? The young knight asked curiously. However, the receptionist shook his head. It was the saintess of the orcs, Qing Yu. She cut off the arm of our country's monk, Tuain, and snatched the legendary gauntlet, Morning Sunday. Because the location of the battle was in a seaside city, her name is on the holy monument. The young knight thought it was a legendary pirate who did it. He did not expect it to be someone else. However, Qing Yu and Tuain were both well-known sanctuary masters, and the young knight had long heard of the grudges between them. Compared to this information, the young knight was more concerned about another question. Why was Saintess Qing Yu ranked first, pushing Ashes down? The legendary gauntlet, Morning Sun. Its value was obviously not as high as the divine artifact, green jade golden coffin. Could it be that there was looting involved? Her actions were more in line with pirate behavior than Ash's simple treasure hunting. So, the Pirate King's divinity favors her more than Ash's name? This was just a guess, and the young knight had no way to get an answer for now. The practical use of the pearl foam made the inside story quite complicated. The holy monument was, of course, a divine artifact. The young knight could not tell which was stronger between it and the fairy tale of the mermaid. The current situation was that the young knight had snatched the green jade golden coffin and the bone of greed from Ashes. Under normal circumstances, his name should replace Ash's name and be ranked first on the holy monument. However, because of the pearl foam, the holy monument was deceived, causing Ashes to still be ranked first. So, the question? Did the covered in dust on the holy monument refer to the knight himself or the young knight? No one could say for sure how good the pearl foam disguise was. This was a question that the young knight had to explore carefully, because the slightest carelessness could expose him. There's no mistake. Return it to its owner. The receptionist put away the used appraisal scroll and returned the bone of greed to the young knight. The young knight signaled for Ash to put it away. Next, it was time to sign the formal contract. Previously, the young knight had used 006 to get the Empire to send him a magic contract scroll through the Swift Eagle. It was only used to confirm his subordinate relationship with the gray-robed, golden-jawed sea snake woman. Now that they had signed this contract, they were truly recognized by the Empire and became one of the personnel who accepted and carried out the Empire's secret mission. The contents of the contract were simple and clear. There were not many restrictions on the young knight and the others. In fact, the conditions were very loose. The Empire naturally couldn't restrict the pirates too much if they wanted to attract them. After confirming that there were no problems, the young knight and the others all signed the same contract. After this step, the receptionist's attitude became even more enthusiastic. He took out a scroll and offered it to the young knight with both hands. This was an alchemy scroll that used an alchemy technique called endless paper. Any extraordinaire could use it. Mages imbued magic power, priests imbued divine power, and fighters imbued combat energy. Like this, the receptionist explained while showing everyone how to use the scroll. Under the infusion of his dark iron-level combat energy, a series of words and numbers appeared on the surface of the scroll. According to the contract just signed, Dragon Captain, you have dark iron-level authority. This authority allows you to enjoy a certain discount when purchasing bronze-level materials. You can purchase most of the dark iron-level materials, as well as a small number of silver-level materials. The specifics are all written on this scroll. We only need to mobilize our spirit to read more content. Everyone's gaze was focused on the scroll. The content on the scroll, as expected, was activated by the receptionist's spirit and new words kept appearing. The materials on this scroll don't seem to be bought with money? The sea snake woman asked. Yes. The receptionist nodded. To buy the materials on this scroll, there are a total of 2 types of currency. One is the currency that circulates normally on the market, and the other is contribution. There are some very important materials that must be contributed. Contribution is converted from the merits of the lords. It is calculated and discussed by scholars to determine the specific numerical result. Sometimes the Empire will issue some specific missions. Completing these missions will give you a lot of contribution. The Golden Chin crossed his arms and asked, "If we loot the goods, will you buy them?" "Of course." The receptionist said, "Under normal circumstances, we will buy them according to the market price. If they are more rare materials, we will also buy them at a premium. The specific items are in the alchemy scroll." The Golden Chin nodded slightly and was very satisfied. To be able to buy them at the market price was already quite good. This was because the spoils of war that pirates looted were often sold at a lower price than the market price. "Can I try?" The young knight observed for a while and reached out to the receptionist. "Of course." The receptionist stuffed the scroll into the young man's hand. As the young man poured his chi into the scroll, he found that part of his spirit was also poured into the scroll. When he wanted to read the next content, the original handwriting on the scroll would quickly disappear, and then new words and numbers would appear. There was a lot of content in the scroll, and it was very complicated. The first part was information. The Empire would provide strong support in terms of information to the pirates who surrendered. Whether it was islands, ships, or the information of strong people at sea, or even treasure maps, it was all included. The young knight was naturally clear about the importance of information. Let's not talk about anything else. If the young knight knew the true strength of Meat Trove in advance, he would have arranged a more appropriate response plan. Veteran pirate groups actually had informants. These informants were distributed in major ports and even on the supply islands halfway through the route. Relying on these informants, the pirates collected information and accurately blocked other ships. The young knight of course did not. If he carried out a pirate raid, he was afraid that he could only patrol the route and wait until he was lucky enough to encounter a merchant ship. The information provided by the Empire will make up for my biggest shortcoming. Of course, the information provided by the Empire was selective and had a strong direction in the dark. This information was not free and needed to be bought with money. Some of the more important information needed to be paid with contribution. Chapter 233. The second part was navigation equipment. Ships were included in this. The warship that the young knight requested was one of the only 3 silver-grade ship models. The 3 types of ships had different performance, one was balanced, one was more defensive, and one was faster. The young knight requested the first type of ship, the balanced type. Other than the ship, there were other navigation equipment. Equipment from the age of great navigation, black iron-grade alchemy tools, nautical sextant, nautical charts with moving patterns, huge buckets that could hold up to 100 kilograms of water at once, sails made from alchemy-grade bird feathers, rudders that could self-repair minor damage. Although the ship that the young knight ordered also had nautical charts, sextants, rudders, and so on, they were only complementary items, and their quality was quite normal. And some of the items were not complete. As the receptionist said, these equipment were of normal, bronze, iron, and a few silver grades. It covered almost all aspects encountered during the voyage. How to choose and choose required skill. The young knight ordered a ship of iron grade. Some of these equipment needed to be carried on the ship, and the foundation of the ship had to be taken into consideration. Normally, iron-grade magic ships could carry silver or even gold-grade equipment. Saint-grade and legendary-grade equipment could not, because it involved magic energy supply, power support, and so on. Magic ships had mana pools and magic furnaces. If the grade of the ship was too high, the power of the equipment would be hard to unleash, and these equipment would cause a huge burden on the ship. The young knight desired cannons the most. There were many types of cannons, divided into curved cannons, and mortar cannons. There were also special cannons, such as the vengeance-burning cannon that could shoot flames, the triple-barreled revolving cannon that could fire continuously, and the radiant healing cannon that could heal the members of his side. After all, the new ship did not have any cannons. All the cannons and cannons were useless. The young knight's gaze lingered on the various cannons. I have a total of 24 cannons. Let's calculate. The final price made the young knight's heart sink slightly. Counting all the funds he had, he could not buy enough cannons. The young knight excluded the normal cannons. The iron-grade alchemy cannons were too expensive, but even if the young knight wanted to buy a bronze-grade cannon, the price multiplied by 24 was too much for the young knight to afford. As for the silver-grade cannons, the young knight did not even think about it, because it would consume the Empire's contribution. Currently, the young knight's contribution to the Empire was very little. After all, he had only fought with flesh trove and lost. The young knight continued reading. The third part of the scroll was Battle Chi Arts. The youth noticed the White River Battle Chi at first glance. There was a brief introduction at the back of the Do Chi book, Do Chi Art created by Doja by He. It was a neutral and gentle Do Chi art that was most suitable for everyone. The effect of cultivating in water was even better. After the young man escaped from Confusion Island, without the anti-magic environment, he quickly sensed the fighting aura in his body. After identifying it, he realized that it was White River Battle Chi. The White River Do Chi technique was very widespread because the founder, Bai He, was a commoner. When he became a silver-ranked knight in his later years, he felt the hardships of cultivation and created this combat chi technique. Although the Do Chi art was at the silver level, he didn't just pass it down to his children. Instead, he spread it widely. This made the young knight a little disappointed. He had hoped to find some clues from the combat aura and use it to find out his true identity. Many battle auras had their user's identity marked. For example, the 100 Needles Battle Chi. Anyone with this type of Battle Chi was basically a member of the 100 Needles clan. It must be admitted that the White River Battle Chi art was not outstanding among all the silver-ranked Do Chi arts. To be more precise, it was very mediocre. There were no outstanding advantages. Of course, there were no obvious shortcomings. The reason why it was rated as a silver-ranked Do Chi art was because there were people who used it to cultivate and reached the silver-ranked Do Chi art. I do need a new Do Chi art. The young knight knew that this was his shortcoming and needed to be improved. This was because the White River Battle Chi and the Flame Dragon bloodline were not compatible. When he mutated into a dragon man, using the White River Battle Chi would cause internal wear and tear. It wasn't just the loss of Do Chi. When he used his Do Chi art, it would also cause interference. The magic energy of the blood core to maintain the Dragonman form would also be consumed more. Bloodline and Do Chi art were deeply involved. The douchi art itself was tailor-made for the user. For example, the 100 Needles Battle Chi art could only be used by members of the 100 Needles clan. This was because the members of the 100 Needles clan all had the bloodline of the Golden Queen Bee. The young knight looked carefully and found that the scroll recorded many douchi arts that were compatible with the dragon bloodline. For example, the dragon-style douchi art was a good match for the wind dragon bloodline. The young knight's gaze quickly fixed on one of the douchi arts. This douchi art was called Explosive Blast. It was also silver-ranked and complemented the flame dragon bloodline. Its advantage was that when douchi was used, it could have an extraordinary explosive force. Its disadvantage was that it was not durable and could be used up easily. If he bought this douchi art, it would also come with a douchi art Flame Blast. This douchi art was very famous and was very powerful. This douchi art was almost the most expensive among all. The young knight found that if he wanted to buy this douchi art, he would have to spend more than half of his own funds and imperial contribution points. It would be difficult to buy other resources. The young knight continued to browse. The fourth section after the douchi art was about meditation. Mages could obtain magic power through meditation and increase their spiritual power. An excellent meditation could increase the efficiency of a mage's cultivation. After the meditation, it was about the praying experience of the clergy, the rules of faith, the rituals, the analysis of the teachings of certain gods, and so on. There were also books like Natural Origins, which were targeted at druids. The sixth section was about douchi art. There was a dazzling array of douchi arts. In the douchi art section, there were also douchi arts. But these douchi arts were part of the douchi art itself. These douchi arts were now very popular and very suitable. Basically, no matter what kind of douchi art it would be able to use douchi arts. As for the specific effects, it would have to be looked at. In terms of douchi arts, the young knight was also lacking. He only knew 200 Needles Blaze and Sharp Needles Rumble. In terms of numbers, not only could he not compare to Zhonggu, but most Black Iron warriors knew at least 3 douchi arts. The young knight quickly took a fancy to a douchi art, Silver Wings. After using this douchi art, he could fly. What troubled him was that although Silver Wings was not expensive, it required a lot of imperial contribution points. According to the young knight's current imperial contribution points, he was not qualified to buy it. According to the douchi art's introduction, Silver Wings uses a lot of douchi. If I use it with explosive douchi art, I'm afraid the battle will be very short. The combination of the two is not good. The young knight threw this worry to the back of his mind and continued to read. After douchi art was magic. After magic, there were no divine arts. Divine arts were given by the gods and did not need to be learned. The eighth part of the scroll was equipment. It covered all aspects of attack and defense, and there were many types and quantities. Currently, I have Silver Lightning, but this sword will probably be returned to the 100 Needles family in the future. As for protective equipment, if I use dragon scales, I can choose not to. What made the young knight excited was that there were armor sets. Shoulder armor, breastplate, mask, greatsword, and other equipment. If worn together, the magic array or alchemy technique on it could form a whole, so the effect of attack and defense would be better. It could also form a special function, such as reducing the weight of the armor, invisibility, flight, and so on. After the armor sets were potions. There were all kinds of special medicines for infectious diseases. Ships with conditions would generally be equipped with a set when sailing. The young knight also saw bloodline stabilizer. In the eyes of ordinary people, he needed this potion. He had originally planned to buy one. But if he did not use it, he would use it as a cover. But the price. The young knight felt a little embarrassed. After the potion was Magic Pet. The young knight was interested in all kinds of magic beasts and magic plants. The blood core absorbed these bloodlines and used them for itself. The young knight relied on this ability to survive until now on the Lost Island. Let's put it aside for the time being. It was worth mentioning that the young knight also found humans, elves, dwarves, goblins, and so on in this content. These intelligent beings could also be used as pets or slave. The slave trade was one of the most prosperous and large-scale trades in the Sacred Empire. The second last part was magic scrolls. For example, enslavement scrolls were for magic pet. The magic scrolls that the young knight and the sea snake woman in gray and gold used were also contract scrolls. The last part was all kinds of materials: casting materials, wood to repair ships, raw materials for alchemy, food and water for transcendence, meat of various qualities of magic beasts, honey, and so on. Putting away the scroll, the young knight sighed in his heart. The prosperity of the empire was simply overwhelming. "I need to carefully consider it," the young knight said to the receptionist. The receptionist smiled. "That's a wise decision. This scroll is yours. I've always been stationed at New Moon Harbor. Captain, you can come to me at any time." The young knight nodded and left the dock. After dismissing everyone, he strolled around New Moon Village and secretly met with Song-Su, Lan Zhao, and the others. Song-Su knew about the situation on the young knight's side and also understood the young knight's distress. He suggested, "That secret room at the bottom of the sea may contain valuable treasures. But if we want to open it, we need high-quality unsealing scrolls." Unsealing scrolls? The young knight opened the Empire's list again. Sure enough, there were unsealing scrolls, but the high price made his heart sink. If he bought the scrolls, he might not even be able to gather 10 ordinary cannons. Song-Su had explored the secret room at the bottom of the sea and found that it was heavily guarded. There were no thieves among them, so even if they used unsealing scrolls, they might not be able to break the defense. Should he take the gamble? You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.